Alrighty, everybody. How is everyone doing today? It is your buddy, your pal, your friend, Mike from PA, and we are live once again. Sorry, Wake, but we don't have time for Yugoslavia forever.
So,
welcome, everybody. What a day we have for you today. Cenk Uygur, and I found this just as I was about to go live. Cenk Uygur went on Brianna Wu's podcast to attack AOC. Germans debate the freezing point of Palestinian babies is a wild title, but it is reality. Okay, we're doing a little. It's Friday, chat. We're just gonna do a little bit of ADHD shit. By the way, I just want to say, never hesitate to message me. My response to people is that I am very much autistic, and you shouldn't feel bad messaging me. I'm not going to be mad at you if you message me. But that being said, I may or may not see it. You know, it's like, message me again. I don't care. It's fine. You're not going to piss me off if you do. However, that being said, don't be an asshole. This is something I wanted to talk about, chat. Bernie Sanders is based. Right now, there is a divide. There is a divide between left liberals and the left again. And it is on H1B. If anybody you see criticizing Bernie Sanders' take on H1B visas is a fucking dumbass. H1B visas in America are terrible. They make people indentured servants to a specific employer. They make people vulnerable to deportation because of the program. I'm in favor of skilled migration, but the reality is that one of the key ways that capitalists divide the working class is through means like the H1B visa program. And this is how liberals help fascism. Because let's say you're an American worker. You worked hard in school. You got a college degree that you borrowed a bunch of money. You get a job. And then your employer is like, "Oh, I want to pay you less. I'm going to hire some guy from India who doesn't have student loans and therefore can afford to take less money. And I'm going to have you train him as your replacement. And then after you're done, I'm going to fire you. And my profits are going to go up. You're unemployed with student loans. And this immigrant is now, if he ever speaks up about working conditions, if he ever asks for a rise in pay, I'm going to fire his ass." And where does the vast majority of his money go? Does it get spent to the domestic American economy? No, it gets sent back as remittances to the country he immigrated from. So you see a reduction of consumption in the United States, hurting our economy. It requires an American trained worker is fired and his life is dramatically affected. You see wage pressure go down, and the capitalists get even more power over labor, so they can't do things like unionize. That's what the H-1B visa program does. Now, I am not opposed to bringing in people who are skilled in this country to work. That's totally fine. But they should come in and have the same status as any other American worker. And we should be working to build them into a class-based solidarity, not use nationality and national and immigration status as a wedge between one type of worker and another. And anybody who counters this at all, you're a fucking idiot. You're straight up a dumbass. Legitimately, you are a fucking dumbass. One other factor is that the existence of H-1Bs push a lot of pressure toward U.S. PhDs into defense industries where H-1Bs aren't allowed due to security clearance. Exactly. Oh, of course. There's a whole bunch of negative knock-on effects. And then that creates racial animus. And this is true of anything. I'll give you another example. Let's say that you and I are on strike at a steel mill. This is what capitalists used to do. Let's say that in the organized labor movement, you and I organize a union and we go on strike and we shut down production at a steel plant in Pittsburgh. And then the steel plant owner goes down to Alabama, advertises in the newspapers that they have a bunch of jobs in Pittsburgh, and fills up buses and trains full of sharecroppers from Alabama, and brings them in to cross the picket line. And then you know what the capitalist will do? He'll go and say and be like, look at these sharecroppers crossing the picket line. They're scabs, and it's because they're black. And that's how fascism wins, because you fall into the trap of blaming the racial difference rather than recognizing that it is the state and the capitalists that are colluding to create a picket line crosser, because those workers from Alabama were a underclass that was suppressed and exploited and oppressed, and they're doing the natural thing, which is trying to be upwardly mobile. Those of us on the left, we should recognize that every organization that is based on workers needs to be racially neutral. It needs to be focused on a class-based solidarity. And we need to educate all workers. And so we need to set up our systems. If we're on the left and we're talking about reforms that we want, they should be based on how to create intra-class solidarity. And if you ignore these type of things, if you ignore these tactics by the capitalist class, you are falling right into their hands, and you're falling right into the hands of the far right. And that's why liberals help the far right, because they say, oh, you're mad that you got replaced by an H-1B visa holder who's an indentured servant, you racist. That's exactly how the far right wins, because it seems like, why isn't the left referring to this very legitimate tactic that capitalists use to undercut labor? Why are they ignoring American workers? If you are one of those people who ignores American workers, you are part of the problem. I see everyone focusing on the immediate practical consequences of the H-1B debate, but I think the key point is ideological. Neoliberalism has used competition through educational attainment to justify its equities. I think that's why it's so important. The practical advantages are just cherry on top. Well, no, I mean, yes, it's self-reinforcing, right? Because it's like, oh, wow, I posted evidence of its abuse, by the way, chat. And nobody cares about what I'm saying on this specific issue. But here's it. I don't think Elon Musk should be allowed to hire H-1B analysts, accountants, or engineers from overseas at Tesla who are paid as little as $52,666 and could have their visa taken away from them by their boss if they complain about unfair or illegal working conditions. Guys, there's no such thing as an accountant in the United States. There's no accountants to hire in the United States. We need to go abroad to get accountants. We need to go abroad to do a battery test engineer. Oh, guys, we need to go abroad for an associate CAD engineer. Nobody in America knows how to use CAD. We need the best and brightest from abroad on CAD. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Listen, there are no accountants in America. Elon needs to hire them from abroad. Why are foreigners less worthy of employment than citizens, Mike? Legitimate liberals. Legitimate liberals, get out of here. You're too stupid. I'm going to be honest with you, chat. This is the reality of the world. We are organized along nation-state lines. The working class cannot organize across state lines. They literally make it illegal. We have to do we have to do associations. This nation state is the way in which labor law and immigration law and status is determined. So if we are trying to organize reforms, if we're trying to take more of the profit from the capitalist class, then we have to do it among workers in our state. I'm an internationalist, however. And that is the obvious point. And if you're one of those people that are like, no, you're being a racist, fuck you. You are a worthless liberal and a dumbass. Capital can move across state lines, but workers cannot. Well, first of all, we wouldn't want that. Like, literally, we wouldn't want, like, does anybody think that it would work in American domestic policies if, say, 50 million people immigrated to the United States this year? From a practical standpoint, that would be impossible, because the United States of America cannot build housing. It cannot build infrastructure. It would be a disaster because of the actual institutions that exist. And this is where leftists get trapped. And this is where they look stupid, is when you no longer actually recognize material reality and you have ideological things that you cleave to out of fear of being called racist or something, which is a bad faith thing. I never made any claim that Indian engineers were inferior to American engineers or anything like that. I said simply, we should allow capital to manipulate our national laws to get their own advantage. By the way, this is really, really amazing. Pelosi did it. She officially finished 2024 up 54% and beat out Inverse Kramer for the top portfolio on autopilot. Oh my God. She made 54% in 1 year. Inverse Kramer made 43%. Does Inverse Kramer just do the opposite of whatever Kramer says? Yes. Inverse Kramer is just whatever Kramer makes a recommendation, it does the opposite thing. And then Pelosi is just following Pelosi's publicly reported trades. This isn't profit margin. This is increase in the this is a 1 year performance. So if she started this year with $100,000, she would have $154,000 just from investing. No, Mike, she doesn't have a degree in mathematics or investing. She's just that fucking good. She's legitimately an organized criminal. How about starting the new year investing alongside Pelosi? Because if you can't beat them, join them. I mean, following Pelosi's trades is probably not a bad idea. That being said, this is not investment advice. Just something to point out. How well did her husband do? That's what it is. That's what it is, basically. It's her and her husband. They don't report their trades for like a month or two. Might be too late by then. I think that following Pelosi thing includes the delay. Like, I don't think they use the date she traded. I think they use like a delay. The Pelosi stock index becomes the new standard for index funds worldwide. Being on H-1B is so annoying, as I have to put so much of my time and effort here in the States, yet my path to citizenship or even a green card is 15 years more to go and have spent 10 years already. That's incredibly fucked up. And that's the alternative that I propose. I propose that if somebody is getting if they're getting an H-1B visa approved, and we should get rid of the H-1B and they should just become a permanent resident. And that way they're not connected to their employer. And if they find a better job or they want to unionize, their employer can't fire them. And if the employer wants to fire them, fire them. They don't have to leave. They can find a new job. H-1B should be about, and if anything, we should have sectoral bargaining as well. So let's say you get hired in a job, you get your green card, you immediately get a union card, you get a political education about what strikes are, about how, and it's all automatic. And you don't have to worry about getting undercut with your salary, because if we legitimately do need workers from abroad, that because we have a skill shortage or whatever, or there's like entrepreneurial ambitious people that want to come to our country and whatever, I'm okay with that. I mean, that would be insane to want to stop that, but that's not the way the system is working. Have I watched Sam Hyde's message to Elon? Well, the thing is, Sam Hyde is just a very typical Nazi, low IQ Nazi, in the sense that literally every single thing we say has been proven right by the way Elon operates. I will say this: isn't it interesting, chat, who Destiny promoted? Like, he's got a worse record than TYT. He's got Lauren Southern. He got Nick Fuentes. He's very friendly with Sam Hyde. I mean, it's a veritable Nazi cornucopia over there at DGG. So strange. Brianna Wu now. Hillary was far superior to Bernie on immigration and trade. No, she wasn't, unless you love America being destroyed. Why should H-1Bs even exist? It's literally serfdom. If you lose your job, you get deported. They should be citizens. Absolutely. Biden was a very strong candidate and ran a great campaign. He literally, this is the kind of delusion. Biden couldn't speak and hid in his Delaware base. Oh my God, I misspelled Delaware. It's Delaware basement for his entire campaign. He was bailed out because Trump caught I can type chat COVID a month before the election and looked he couldn't handle the pandemic. Even then, Biden barely got over the finish line. Widespread mail-in ballots. Like, this is the actual reality. Like, Biden only won because it was incredibly easy to vote, and Trump caught COVID. If you guys don't remember, in early October, the October surprise was Trump catching COVID and having to be helicoptered to Walter Reed and he got the third dose of monoclonal antibodies for COVID ever created. Did you guys know that? That Trump was on oxygen and he got the third ever dose of monoclonal antibodies. If he wasn't the president of the United States, Donald Trump would have died of COVID. This is a story that people don't really know about, but it was widely reported. Who got the first? I don't know. I'm sure it was like tested. It was like being tested. You know what I mean? Like here, let me see if I could. I'll give you an example. Let me see if I can. Trump at Walter. Trump taken to Walter Reed because of COVID. Here we go. Let's see if we can find what the story said. The president was taken to Walter Reed National Medical Military Center on Friday. His physician told reporters that Trump will soon be monitored closely and may not be entirely out of the woods yet. October 5th. President Donald Trump returned to the White House from the hospital Monday, saying he'd recovered from the novel coronavirus, that people should not be afraid of a disease that has killed more than 209,000 Americans. More than a dozen officials have tested positive for the coronavirus in recent days, a steadily increasing total that grew again Monday, to include White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. The contagious president climbed up the stairs rather than use the usual ground level entrance and posed for pictures. Like, do you guys not remember? Like, this, like, the fact is, at the time, this was incredibly, he was seen as a complete doofus. Read this article from the Texas Tribune. They're basically ripping him apart. Let me see if we can like, actually find the story. Oh, here it is. Thank you, Grev. President Trump received experimental antibody treatment. Mr. Trump received a single dose of an antibody cocktail made by the biotech Regeneron. The company's CEO has known the president for years. President Trump has received a dose of an experimental antibody cocktail being developed by drug maker Regeneron, in addition to several other drugs, including zinc, vitamin D, and a generic version of the heartburn treatment Pepcid. In the letter, Mr. Trump's doctor, Dr. Sheed B. Conley, said he completed the infusion without incident and he remains fatigued but in good spirits. There are no approved treatments for COVID-19, but the Regeneron treatment is one of the most promising candidates, along with another antibody treatment developed by Eli Lilly. Both are being tested in patients around the country. This is exactly what I said. Like, he got, maybe it wasn't the third dose, but it was one of the earliest doses of the monoclonal antibodies. He would have died. If he was a regular guy, he wouldn't have been eligible for this. They basically like broke the rules to give him shit that wasn't approved because they knew it. They had promising results, so they were like, we can't let him die of COVID. They gave him a drug outside of the normal, like double-blind studies. He literally, like, this is what happened. Initial results have suggested they can reduce the level of the virus in the body and possibly shorten hospital stays when they are given early in the course of the infection. Although Regeneron's product has not been authorized for emergency use by the Food and Drug Administration, companies can grant access to their experimental treatments through compassionate use. If all of their options have failed and a patient might die without trying the drug, all we can say is that they asked to be able to use it and we were happy to oblige. Our first priority is to maintain a sufficient supply in order to conduct rigorous clinical trials, adding there is a limited product available for compassionate use requests that are approved under certain exceptional circumstances on a case-by-case basis. And exactly what they were saying is, hey, do you have a relative who's dying of COVID? This is only for Trump. Fuck you. Like, I'm sorry to bring this up, but it's just like, these liberals are fucking scum, and I hate them. Like, the trying to retroactively pretend that Joe Biden was some sort of good candidate when he won, because he only won because of luck. Pure fucking luck. My tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that I 100% believe wholeheartedly is that Biden's first bout of COVID actually killed him, but his soul was stored in a phylactery, his organs in canopic jars, and his spirits was preserved in Horcruxes like Hunter's laptop. I think he wouldn't want to have a Horcrux in something that was a little... first of all, if you're saying lich, you should say phylactery. Horcrux is just something that... they, basically just copied the idea of a phylactery from D&D, and yeah, just say phylactery. But if you're gonna have a phylactery, you should store it in something really less interesting than your son's criminal laptop. Did you see on his on stream last night the chief of police ran over 2 people herself in August? Wait, what happened? New Orleans PD Chief Kirkpatrick was on duty when she hit 2 people with a vehicle. We also noticed crime cameras in the area were not working to get video of the incident. Oh no, the cameras didn't work. Oh no, oh gosh. All right, let's watch this Yanis Varoufakis thing, and then we'll get into the New Orleans shit.
The American dollar and China. What to watch for during 2025? Donald Trump wants to boost exports, to bring American jobs back to the United States, and to shrink the American trade deficit. For that, he needs a lower value of the dollar. For that, he needs a weaker dollar. But at the same time, Donald Trump wants a strong dollar, and he will not brook any discussion of ending the exorbitant privilege, the centrality, the hegemony, the dominance of the American dollar in international transactions. Can Donald Trump possibly have both? Donald Trump's first problem is that the tariffs that he has invested so much political capital in introducing, announcing, and advocating for will most likely boost the value of the dollar. Why? Primarily because every time there is global uncertainty, whenever there is a problem that emanates from the United States, whether that was the 2008 crisis or whatever crisis there is a paradoxical rush of foreign money into the United States, boosting the dollar. So if Trump's tariffs create global uncertainty, the likely outcome will be an increased value of the dollar. And that's his first problem, because if his tariffs succeed in creating a lot of consternation across the world, in China, in the European Union, in Britain, the result will be that even if imports initially shrink as a result of these large tariffs, the influx of money into the United States of capital is going to boost the value of the dollar, therefore countering whatever effects the tariffs had on limiting imports and enhancing American exports. Donald Trump's second problem is that if he proceeds with his very large tax cuts, especially for corporations and the oligarchs and the very rich in the United States, this is also going to attract into the United States foreign capital. And what will that do? Boost the value of the dollar, and therefore enhance the gap between American savings and investment, with investment being much greater than savings, which is a root cause of the American trade deficit. Trump's third problem is the exorbitant privilege of the United States dollar. It is the reason why every time there is a crisis, especially one emanating from within the United States, the dollar goes up and the US trade deficit gets worse, especially during periods of reduced demand, jobs, and employment within the United States. So if Donald Trump were serious about shrinking the American trade deficit, he would want to do away with the exorbitant privilege of the United States dollar. But of course, not only will he never allow himself to do that, because his best friends, his tribe, are the rentiers and the financiers, who will be aghast if the United States loses the exorbitant privilege of its dollar. It is highly unlikely that Donald Trump will want to be the first American president after the Second World War that loses the hegemonic power of the United States by losing the exorbitant privilege of the United States dollar.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the issue that I find fascinating. And I'm my position on Yanis, I actually think that they're a lot less competent than you think, Yanis. Like, they're stupid. Like, a lot of the right-wing billionaires are dumb assholes, and they believe their own bullshit. They think they're pharaohs, okay? They think they're godlike. They think they're a superior caste. Like, they legitimately do. And so you look at the situation and go, a rational person would recognize that the United States of America gets the ability to consume a lot more than our fair share through the fact that the United States dollar is the global reserve currency. Therefore, the government of the United States is not going to do anything which imperils the reserve currency status of the United States, because it gives them such an advantage in international trade and international diplomacy, and kind of solidifies their hegemonic status. And it's like, no, they would. If one of the billionaires in Trump's circle thinks he can make some more money, they'll do dumb shit, Giannis. They will. They will do dumbass shit. They are not rational. They're not effective. I mean, how many wars does America need to catastrophically lose? In Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Korea, in Vietnam, in Yemen? How many wars does the United States need to run away with their tail between their legs after spending trillions and losing thousands of American soldiers and service members before you recognize they're not very good at this empire thing? And they're going to do dumbass shit. I mean, like, it's like, for me, it's the homelessness thing. Like, homelessness is one of those issues in America that really shows just how ineffective and incompetent they are. It's like shockingly easy to fix homelessness.
Argue, and I think they do have a point, that maybe what he's trying to do, what Donald Trump is trying to do, is he is threatening the world, China and the European Union in particular, with very large tariffs in order to come to an arrangement with them to accept a depreciation of the Chinese yuan, of the euro, of competing currencies, in order for the United States to see its exports rise and its imports diminish. To cut a deal, in other words, something along the lines of what Ronald Reagan did in 1985, the infamous Plaza Accords, supposedly a multilateral meeting between the Europeans, the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians. But in reality, what the Plaza Accords were about was an ultimatum by Washington on Tokyo. Appreciate the yen massively, or else I'm going to slap large tariffs on Japanese exports. The Japanese are rolled over. They did as they were told. The reason why Japan's massive growth rates between 1950 and 1985 were eliminated, and why Japan lost its verve, its dynamism, was because they accepted those Plaza Accords. Is China likely to accept a new Plaza Accords?
No.
I assign a zero probability to that possibility. China is no Japan.
Yeah.
Japan was an occupied country by the United States. The United States wrote...
It still is. The United States holds all the strategically important bases within the home island. like we own the country. This is something people, I mean, maybe, I usually think everybody knows this, but Japan is an occupied country. To this day, United States Forces Japan. United States Forces Japan is headquartered at Yokota Air Base. Hey, chat, I lived here. I personally lived here. United States Forces Japan is headquartered at Yokota Air Base in Tokyo. Is commanded by the commander, U.S. Forces Japan, who is also commander of the 5th Air Force. U.S. Forces Japan oversees U.S. military personnel, assets, and installations in Japan, including approximately 55,000 active duty service members and 15 major bases. 15 major bases! Do you think that means that Japan could fight the United States? Do you think that Japan maybe perhaps listens to what the United States tells it to do? The new government adopted the Constitution of Japan and the No Armed Force Clause in 1947. So no, it's still an occupied country.
Its constitution, there are tens of thousands of American soldiers still occupying Okinawa. China, I will repeat this once more,
how you doing?
Is not Japan. It is highly unlikely that they will accept, at a time when the capital account of China, if anything, would recommend from an economic point of view a depreciation of the yuan. They will never accept a massive appreciation of the kind that would make the difference for the United States trade deficit in the way that Donald Trump would like. So this is pie in the sky. No new Plaza Accords between the United States and Beijing this time are on the horizon. In that sense, it looks very unlikely that what Donald Trump wants, at least both his objectives of shrinking the US trade deficit and maintaining the exorbitant privilege of the dollar, that both these objectives will be satisfied at once in 2025, in the next 4 years. The great question, however, for 2025 and beyond, concerns China's dilemma. Will Beijing decide to stay put, gaining time until the United States' internal contradictions, Trump's conundrum and dilemma, plays out? Or will Beijing make the choice, which it has not made yet? They have not made up their minds yet, and I think reasonably, will, however, at some point make the choice, make the decision to convert the BRICS area into a new version of Bretton Woods.
By the way, Bernie Sanders is winning so hard with his H-1B visa take. Bernie Sanders is the only politician in America that could have saved America. He should have run. He should have primaried Biden. He should have primaried Biden. I'm just like, I'm sorry, let's finish the Bretton Woods before I get off on this rant.
Bretton Woods had at its heart the US dollar for the BRICS area to have the yuan at its heart, with more or less fixed exchange rates between the yuan, the rupiah, and other currencies, and with a view to recycle China's surpluses within the BRICS area, because that would be the greatest and most lethal danger for the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. This is not a decision that has been made as yet. Well, in 2025 or in the years following 2025, I think we shall know the answer. Till then, be well.
Oh my Lord, Bernie Sanders is winning. And I think, you know, I've been criticizing the Majority Report, chat, but I think they've actually been good on this. And I like the Majority Report. I just want to say this. But whenever I criticize Majority Report, it's 100%. Okay, they haven't posted a video about it yet. But whenever I criticize them out of love. You know, that's it. It's not because like where we have disagreements, these are important points of friction. You know, like the orientation we should have toward Democratic Party influencers is a great example of what I'm talking about. Like David Pakman is a scumbag. So why could Biden and every other U.S. politician talk about saving American jobs when the intention of heightening militarism with China or selling some trade deal, but when Sanders uses similar rhetoric to emphasize labor exploitation, he's met with a deluge of criticism. I don't think the deluge is actually happening. I think everybody who's criticizing Bernie is the type of person that we already was criticizing Bernie. And if you are a person who is criticizing Bernie and you don't normally criticize Bernie, you're a fucking idiot. You're dead wrong. He's right on this. What's wrong with Pakman? He's a Zionist. He's a fake progressive. I mean, like, what more do you want? He attacks Muslim women. Like, what else is there to say? One quibble is that he could have emphasized international worker exploitation instead of framing it as competition for American jobs. Still, the idea that it's more nativist than any quotidian political pablum is absurd. The motive behind the critique of him is telling. Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with caring about yourself. There's nothing wrong with caring about your co-citizens. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And saying, hey, this is being set up by an international capitalist class for their own interest. By the way, the stockholders of a corporation abusing H-1B visa don't have to be American, and they're the ones who are profiting. So I'm sorry, but if a French stockholder of American corporations gets an extra couple percentage of return and American workers get less compensation, I don't like that. Does that make me a nativist? All right, let's take a look at this. The main function of the H-1B visa program is not to hire the best and brightest, but rather to replace good-paying American jobs with low-wage indentured servants from abroad. The cheaper the labor they hire, the more money the billionaires make. And this right here is reality. This right here is reality. This is about lowering the labor share of profit. In America, in economics, there is something called the labor share and the capital share of profits. Basically, when all is said and done, when you take out the cost of goods and the fixed costs and the rents and everything that costs in order to produce shit, and you see who is getting what share of the total profits at the end. Is it going to labor or is it going to the capital owners? In America, there's been a declining labor share of profit for 40 years. The labor share, or the percentage of economic output that goes to workers, has been declining in the United States and other countries since the 1980s. What this means is that workers have been getting paid less of a percentage of the total economic output since the 80s. As we invent new technologies, as we invent new processes, as we invent, as we increase productivity or work longer hours, less and less and less of that is going to the workers. And H-1B is one of the many, many, many policies we have to induce that. This is the International Monetary Fund. This isn't left-wing losers. This is capitalists' foot soldiers. The share of the national income paid to workers has been declining in many countries. And this includes advanced economies and emerging market and developing economies. So who's winning? If labor is losing, capital is winning. Labor share of income declines when wages grow more slowly than productivity or the amount of output per hour of work. The result is that a growing fraction of productivity gains has been going to capital. And since capital tends to be concentrated at the upper ends of the income distribution, falling labor income shares are likely to raise income inequality. This is what Bernie Sanders is talking about. He's talking about how H-1B visas are abused. to do this? Is this are H-1B visas the only thing that is causing this? No, but they're one of the many tools capital uses. And if you can't engage with actual reality, if you're not going to use words like racist when people talk about how things actually work in the real world, you're fucking useless. You're exactly why the Democrats lose elections. You're exactly why the fascists are winning, because this type of shit needs to be addressed.
Makes use of some kinds of tools, equipment, raw material, whatever. For example, let's use a chair as an example. If you're going to make a chair, you need some wood and some glue and maybe some nails and a hammer.
The truth is, chat, I don't have a lot of passion when I cover these dumb breaking news stories. Because like, what am I going to say? Yeah, it looks like this guy was crazy. Looks like he did the thing. And you're just kind of like, what is there to say? Okay, he was a right winger. But his brain got cooked. Like, what am I, it's not that interesting to me, quite frankly. The only reason to talk about those stories is to bait viewers. That's it. Get my numbers up slightly. But, there's a value in that. But it's just like, and I probably will talk about it at some point. We know, but I like to wait till we know shit to do analysis. I don't just want to react to videos. I want to talk about the videos that we're watching. And I want to, the way I look at my stream is this. I like to curate topics of conversation. I try to organize people into more effective political agents. And then I like to provide analysis and predictions so that you can test my various theories against reality and see if they have predictive and if my statements have value. Right, going forward. And I hope that all of those things work together to create a politically engaged audience that is intelligent and aware. And I hope that merit, and this is my false belief, that the idea that my ideas bearing out to be proven true, the value of my stream being high, will allow it to continue to grow in a geometric rate. Maybe that won't be true, but that's largely the point. 80% of the people I work with are H-1B or overseas in India and the Philippines. This company uses an Indian subcontractor, H-1B pipeline, where the most promising contractors are hired full-time, either locally or in India or brought to the U.S. This gives them a cheap hiring pipeline for trailing employees. Every manager I've had for the past decade has been on a visa. I'm not even aware of anyone that has actually gotten citizenship. Yeah, because there's a maximum number of people from certain countries that can get citizenship. There's a limit on the number of citizenship visa or permanent resident visas granted to people from India or China. So they have a huge backlog. So they remain perma H-1Bs. All right. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Bernie is based. H-1B visa abuse is a huge problem. I love Bernie so much, man. Like, legitimately, we are so, like, I'm so happy that I got to live in a time where my politics was represented by somebody. Like, obviously, I'm more to the left of Bernie, but like, oh, I typoed Bernie. Thank you, by the way. But it's good to have somebody who's not like afraid. Like, this is the Bernie Sanders that almost won in 2016, where he's got a little bit unorthodox opinions on issues that some like educated Brahmin left types would, like guns, or like he's more pro-labor on immigration. Like, he takes the position that American labor unions do, which is like, don't allow foreign workers to be used as a wedge to break up labor solidarity. Common sense shit. All right. Let's watch some boring lecture on capitalism.
Every act of production makes use of some kinds of tools, equipment, raw material, whatever. For example, let's use a chair as an example. If you're going to make a chair, you need some wood and some glue and maybe some nails and a hammer, and you get the idea. And all of those things that are used in production were made by human beings, labor, that's now available for us to use to make more things. Somebody did work a while ago to make the hammer, which I'm going to now use to make the chair. Somebody a while ago put together whatever needed to make the glue that I use and to cut the trees into the lumber that I use. And so we're going to use a simple EL, embodied labor. Every production makes use of embodied labor, labor that's embodied in some product that was done earlier that's now an input to what we're doing now. Basically, simple idea. Here comes another simple idea. With this embodied labor, labor embodied in all the tools, equipment, and raw material, Production involves the addition of living labor, the worker, you, him, her, the people working. So we're going to call that living labor. Embodied labor plus living labor gives you the total labor in whatever we produce in an economy. It's real simple. Okay? You can say it in other words. There's the value of all the stuff we use up when we produce, tools, equipment, and raw materials. And then there's the value added by the worker who uses those pieces of equipment to transform the raw material into the final. So this is nails, glue, lumber. This is the chair maker's effort, and the outcome is the chair. Okay? This is very simple. What is capitalism about? By some process, which we can talk about later, the embodied labor, the work done by working people in the past, becomes the private property of a few people. You know their names. They're called employers. They didn't make this stuff. Absolutely not. Somebody else did. Workers. But those workers didn't get to keep what they produced. They lost what they produced, and it became the property of somebody else. And that capitalist brings to the production process whatever it is he owns. Let's just say, just to make it simple, that it's worth 100. It doesn't matter what it is, just 100 of anything. So we know we're using up in making chairs 100 worth of hammers, nails, glue, lumber, all of that. And now the worker adds value to what he or she produces by transforming the lumber, nails, and glue into a new finished thing called a chair or a sofa or any other piece of output. Okay, and let's, just to make it real simple, say it's another 100. And so the final chair is worth 200. I told you this would be easy. 100 plus 100 equals 200. Economists think this is an enormous achievement here, but most of you probably don't. The arithmetic is simple. Okay? Now let's follow the logic as Marx did. This is what a capitalist does. He brings 100 of what he's come to acquire somehow, we don't know how. And by the way, we never asked the capitalist quite how he got it, do we? It's really only, do you got it or do you not have it? And if you have it, you can be the employer. And if you don't, you can't. The fact that the employer who has it didn't produce it is a nagging problem we prefer not to ask. But we'll come back to it. And you know you can't be an employer because you don't have it. You didn't get it. Somebody else did. So the capitalist brings his 100. But he uses that up. That's the tools and equipment used up. So that 100 shows up in the chair as half of the 200 that chair is worth. And we know that the chair is worth 200 because in addition to the 100 of stuff used up, there was 100 more value added by the worker who worked to make the chair that's worth 200. Now, says Marx, and you're going to say it with me because you're going to understand this. Now Marx says, let's see. For the capitalist, he wants to get back what he laid out, the 100. He gave 100 to the production process. So when he sells the chair at 200, he's going to take 100 of it to replace the tools and equipment and raw materials used up in producing the chair. That's how he can keep on being a chair capitalist. That's how he can keep production going. He has to replace the tools, equipment, and raw materials he used up, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. I don't have the time to be Socratic because we don't have enough time. Okay, let's see. So out of the 200 worth of chair, you need to take 100 to replace what you used up. That leaves you with 100 after you sell the chair. What are you going to do with the 100? You could, here we go now, because this is the crucial part. You could take the other 100 and you could give it to the worker Because after all, it was the worker whose labor added the 100 of value to this stuff to make the 200. You could, couldn't you? And the logic would be, gee, the worker added the value, he or she, here we go, folks, should get it. Because he gave it. He created it. He made it happen. He should get it. Do you think that happens in capitalism? No, you don't, do you? We don't give the worker the value added. Ever in capitalism. It's not how it works. You all know that. But I'm putting it kind of right up front and bold for you to deal with. What is it that capitalists do? They divide that 100 into two parts. One part is what we pay the worker. I'll be generous and say 50. Now you get it. If you made a chair of 200 and you used 100 to replace the tools, equipment, and raw materials you used up, and you used another 50 to pay the workers, that leaves what? 50. Good. Higher math of economics. 50. And Marx called this the surplus. It's what the capitalist has left over after he pays out to himself the 100 worth of tools, equipment, and raw materials he contributed that got used up, and he pays the workers. He's got to pay the workers, because if he doesn't, they won't show up anymore, and the game is over. So to keep it going, he has to replace the tools and equipment, and he has to pay the workers. But he has to pay the workers, here we go, folks, less than the value added by the workers when they work. Or to use the technical term economists like, he has to rip the workers off. He has to steal from them part of what their labor added. You know what the lesson here is? For those of you who imagined that when you graduate from here you will get a job, in fact the only job you will accept is one that pays you what you're worth. Never gonna happen. The condition of your employment is that you produce more by your labor than you get paid. Welcome to the capitalist system.
By the way, chat, this is why small businesses can work. This is ironically why small businesses can work, because even though many small businesses don't have economies of scale, and they don't have a good negotiating power for raw materials, and they don't have the fact that there's so much surplus means that even if you end up paying, 140 for the embodied labor that you're consuming, right? You still end up making more money than you were if you were working for another employer. That's why, people have small businesses and they end up keeping those small businesses, even if they don't have like growth potential, because they're going to get paid more money than if they took a job somewhere. And this is, it's crazy that we have an economy like this where, and this is basically the argument for socialism. Basically, the argument for socialism is this: private individuals should not be dictators over the embodied labor of others. That is the workers, it is the people who should hold this social means of production in common and make those decisions democratically, as opposed to having dictatorships all over the economy where they make boneheaded decisions. Like, I have a serious question. Does anybody believe the Cybertruck was a good idea? How many people do you think at Tesla were like, the Cybertruck looks like shit, it's a terrible fucking idea, let's not do that, it looks like a dumpster, it's poorly performing, it's way too expensive? But because Elon Musk was the dictator of Tesla, he was able to do that with his cult of personality. Can I confirm I run my own consulting company from home? I make more than when I was working for someone else. Of course. Do I have a link to this video? Sure. Let's finish it. Got 8 seconds left.
That's how it works. This thing, surplus, that's profits. That's where the profits of enterprise come from. Best way to describe your work in a capitalist enterprise is not that the employer gives you a job. It's that you give your employer the surplus. The giver and the getter are in reversed order from what the language suggests. You are doing wonderful things for your employer, and they will keep you in that job exactly as long as you can keep producing a surplus adequate to what they need. Okay? That's step one. Volume 1 of Capital lays all that out. And for those of you who have never seen this before, no one has ever done this with you before, this simple took me 5 minutes. Now you get a taste of that repression that I talked to you about at the beginning. That's what happens in a society which is not allowed to think like this. So for some of you, maybe it's the first time. Socialism, given what I've described here. I'm going to answer the question. You're going to see where socialism is now going.
How do you calculate LL and nonprofit where the goods are a service to the public? The answer to that is, I agree with Marxism and socialism, but I struggle to understand the practical application of those in business. Like, I don't understand how an employee interacts with the employer and how this democratic decision-making actually functions. For example, is there a weekly meeting or a daily meeting, or I don't know, just logistical stuff like this I don't understand? The answer to that question, which is a good question, is it depends on what you're trying to do, right? The main argument on capital, like, first of all, for example, you will still have authority under socialism, right? You're still going to have people who know more shit and educating and training people who know less shit. You're still going to have foremen and just supervisors. That stuff isn't capitalism. It's not capitalism. Capitalism is simply the ownership. Who owns the rights to the profit? Who owns the embodied labor at the end? That's all capitalism is. It is who owns the means of production. Everything else you're talking about, how we do the shifts, what we decide to make, none of that is capitalism. That is actually a conflation. In capitalism, I can own 100% of Amazon and make no decisions myself and reap all the profits. That would be 100% considered to be normal. There is no tasks associated with ownership. None whatsoever, except those that we create as a society. Because ownership is a construct enforced by society. Like, that is the reality. So, like, this is very important because many people who defend capitalism get confused and they think something like, for example, markets or exchange. That is capitalism. No, it's not. No, it absolutely isn't. It absolutely is not. Markets predate capitalism. They are not capitalist. Exchange predates capitalism. They're not capitalist. Capitalism refers to a very specific formation of our society where we put ownership of the big socially constructed things like a factory in the hands of private individuals rather than socially. A good question, a good comparison would be to talk about roads. Who owns the roads? Who designs, who says where roads go? Like, this is, yet they exist, yet they function. Now, do some societies produce roads that are in better condition, better maintained, better designed than others? Absolutely. Just because we change the means of ownership doesn't mean we delete all problems of being human beings in actual material reality. And so the answer to your question is, like any other, like, cooperative companies already exist. It's just that our society should be redesigned to delete the capitalist class because they don't serve any function. They hang like a barnacle off of society.
I mean, this should go without saying. It should, but unfortunately, you fucking level 1 rookie bitch ass commentators on Twitter, I don't understand it. You not fooling a libertarian by bringing up them bitch ass roads. How many times is it that we say we oppose taxation, and the first goddamn level 1 rookie childish kindergarten ass bitch made argument that you throw out there is, what about the roads? You must drive on the roads. You must hate the roads. You think we ain't feel all the things that could stump Libertarians, which tend to be smarter people, they tend to get that by way of economic reasons. And you somehow think that the thing that's gonna stump us and be like, damn, fuck this libertarian shit, is the motherfucking roads. Jesus Christ. Walter Block has a long form write-up of the privatization of roads and highways. This is level 1 shit. Just because maybe you can't figure it out, which is okay. This is why we're for free markets. It's because you can't figure out how minus taxation, people would say, damn, I need to get over there. What if we built a goddamn flat space? If you think people can't figure that shit out, or you can't figure out how people would do that, so you. That's okay. This is why we're free markets. Let the smart people kind of figure that shit out and allocate those resources. But I promise you, homies, you not fooling now libertarian by bringing up them bitch-ass roads. Fuck them hoe-ass roads, man.
Well,
wow, libertarians really hate roads.
they really, really do hate roads. And but
If
here's
Trump gets reelected,
now,
I'm going to become a libertarian.
I have, of course, I've interviewed Walter Block multiple occasions, and people can go back and make their own assessments as to the soundness of Walter Block's arguments. But
Mike, you were talking about social hangouts for political action the other day. Well, one of the things that the communists and socialists of Germany and Austria used to do is your membership in the party wasn't just your political opinions. Your membership came with a whole bunch of real life benefits. You had a social clubs, you had sports teams, you had apartments, you had kindergartens and daycare for your kids. You would have like a nonprofit benevolent association to help you with things like medical expenses. Like the socialist political parties and the unions that were associated with them actually provided to you real life tangible benefits. And it was your goal to expand those into formal state programs. You got things for being a socialist, and you also paid in. You volunteered. You worked at the co-op. You know, you participated in the sports leagues. You paid a little bit of money in dues every month. It was a real fucking thing, and there was give and there was take.
Mr. July, he doesn't offer any. He just says it's very remedial. Now, I don't think the idea is that we're trying to fool libertarians by bringing up roads. It is incredibly fundamental and rudimentary in many respects, because you walk out of your house and you see a road, and you say to yourself, how did it get there? Now, I believe that Mr. July thinks that, well, making a road is easy, and it is to a certain extent. It's not a horribly complicated physics problem on how to make a road, and in fact, we all have, not all, but many of us Americans have a relationship with private roads. And for the most part, we call them driveways. And everyone can figure out how we make a driveway. But the point is, the driveway does lead to a road. And for those of us who have spent some time living in rural areas.
Actually, this is one of those things that I want to stop for a second and just explain. The reason why Rome was one of the world's great empires was because they spent state resources on building roads. They said, hey, we're not going to let roads be random desire paths, rutted desire paths that get bogged down into fucking mud, and we require every random person on their little stretch to improve it. They said, no, we're going to do a professionally engineered and constructed road network. And what was the reason they did that? Military purposes. And then, because of the military purposes, they were able to defend their territory. They were able to prevent banditry and highwaymen, and they were able to prevent traders and merchants and commerce and economic development could increase. And so the wealth of the Roman Empire was directly connected to what? State capacity. The state grew in capacity. The wealth of the Roman Empire grew. Now, this is an ancient proto-state, but you get my point. Is that what made Rome great was the fact that it did roads as a social project, not leaving it to random libertarians. And what did you find when you left roads to the quote market? Nobody would invest because roads are expensive. Roads are hard to maintain. Nobody wants to invest in a road and have everybody else reap the benefit.
On dirt roads, and then have actually watched the process of these roads over time maybe becoming paved. We understand why some roads would never, ever get built. Because when Mr. July is talking about the allocation of resources, he is saying that the smart people will allocate resources in a way, and they will. But the smart people, as he calls them, which I would suggest in a libertarian world would be defined by something like how much money is in your bank account. That's an indication of how smart you are. The smart people would only build roads that benefit them. And now that benefit could be broader than just, I need a road to my house and my gated community with my paramilitary that's there waiting for me. It could also be like, I need a road for the serfs so that they can bring me, tribute or grains, whatever it is. But what of the serfs that live too far? Or what of the serfs who are saying, I don't want to give you grains? I just want to live my life here. But of course, I need access to other people on some level. I mean, that's the whole point. We could privatize the post office. We could privatize the road system, but I think it's undeniable. And even someone as mentally challenged as myself, in talking to Mr. July,
to bitch ass arguments.
Yes,
Ho-ass.
For hoe-ass roads, which you're obsessed
someone
with.
for me who has an affinity for the B asterisk 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 A asterisk asterisk roads. I would say that it's undeniable that we would have fewer roads. Now, maybe that would be a good thing, but it wouldn't necessarily be a public policy decision if it was based upon private funding. It would only benefit those people with money. And same with the post office. You're from North Dakota.
Actually, what would happen is everybody would be worse off, even the people with money. This is what people don't understand, is that even the people with money are worse off when there's homeless people all over the place. Do you get it? Like, even if I live in a beautiful, 40th floor penthouse apartment, and I have a doorman, and I have security, and I have secured parking, and I have private security guards. When I leave my tower and I walk on the street, the fact that there isn't social care affects me. I could get HIV from getting pricked by an abandoned heroin needle. I could step in human feces. I could be accosted by somebody having a mental breakdown. Just because I have money, my conditions are shit. They actually become shit. I get a worst lived environment that is hard to quantify in dollars and cents. If I can't drive around because the roads are patchy I have to go between toll road and toll road. I have to wait in line to pay tolls, which means I lose my lifetime. I have to waste time going on these stupid toll collections. I have to fill out 80 different forms to get registered for 80 different easy passes. Like, how many hours do I have to spend signing myself up for various toll road bullshit? Everybody loses out. And then here's the thing. We lose out on the positive externalities. Now, if you don't know what an externality is, chat, I want to explain it to you very simple. An externality is a benefit or a cost that accrues to society or a third party because of a transaction. A negative externality would be you getting asthma because I'm burning coal for my power plant to sell electricity to somebody else. And you get asthma because I put pollution into the air while I'm burning the coal. That's a negative externality. A positive externality is like the internet. As more and more people buy internet connections, the number of connections grows and the value of each new connection goes up because the network grows in value the larger it gets. That's a positive externality. So the fact that I am buying internet connections from this ISP is more valuable to me, the more people have already done that. So that's a positive externality. That's a benefit of society. So the transaction between me and my ISP grows in value for me based on the number of people that are connected to the internet in total. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So when we build a beautiful transportation network and we make it free or nearly free, there's all sorts of transactions that may have been blocked by transportation expenses that now take place. And that increased economic activity leads to increased productivity, which leads to increased wealth. And it's very hard to immediately predict how things are going to advance by just doing something as simple as enhancing our transportation capacity. And this is the type of stuff this is why the left works. Because like many of the times we're doing things because we think they're morally right and because we believe in the dignity of humanity. And what ends up happening is the more you invest in humanity, the more you invest in people, the more you invest in our built environment and infrastructure, and the more you invest in making things right, you end up making things better. Like people, people getting educated, people getting, training, people getting health care when they're sick or getting preventative care to prevent illness. They end up, that results in more goodness that we didn't even think was going to happen before we did the good thing. And it results in and that's how development is like this. Because the more good you do, the more good is done and the better everybody's life is. Because, and this is the fundamental truth of humanity, that human beings are good. Human beings, on average, provide happiness and goodness to the world. Each human being, and the more that you pour into them, the more that you support them, the more that you protect them, the more that you enlighten them, the more good they do. And that is the fundamental truth that makes our political project work. Human beings are actually good. Human beings are good, actually. And the better you treat them, the better they are. Now, does that mean every single person is good and there's never going to be a bad seed or there's never going to be a sociopath or there's never going to be an asshole? No. That's why I said on average people are good. And you know what we should do to those people? We should socially control them. And that, it doesn't necessarily mean, torture them or whatever or punish them. It means that we address them as they pop up. Mike, did you see the recent video of Israelis' thoughts on dead civilians? You might walk that back. Those people are broken because they've been brainwashed into fascism by right-wing. That's right-wing ideology. Right-wing ideology, it makes people bad. Right-wing ideology is about protecting the sociopaths that are at the top of the hierarchy and helping them exploit all of us more, right? That's the grand battle we have in humanity. The grand battle for the soul of humanity is the battle between the 5% of people that are, amoral sociopaths and the 95% of humanity that is the loving ape that is picking the lice out of each other's hair. That is the battle. Are the amoral sociopaths going to set themselves up in a sadistic tower of torture and death? Or are we going to build ourselves a communal society of love and art? That's the battle. And the thing is, I am one of those people here to tell the apes, the 95%, that some of us need to grab guns and we need to subdue that 5%. This is what people does not understand about China's rapid development. The state-backed infrastructure literally generates more taxes since people can visit provinces easily. It makes businesses boom. Resource transportation to their factories can be done in 2 days' time. Kids from provinces can easily access universities in the cities. Be home in the end of the week after a few-hour train ride. Every action is to uplift its people. Wish we could have that here. Oh, of course.
Coda, correct, Matt?
That's correct, yep.
There's really no reason for us to have postal service to North Dakota, I think, largely speaking. And in many areas, I would imagine it's fairly remote. But short of Indian reservations, there's postal service that is relatively convenient to all of you. Maybe got to go down to the local post office. But you know what? If I had to allocate resources in a way that was just about pure market efficiency, probably not.
I'll say getting deliveries is more dependable in my hometown than it is in Brooklyn sometimes.
Well, I mean...
that does not surprise me because nobody has a buzzer.
Well, the point being that smart people, and I don't know how he's defining smart people, would allocate resources only in a way that benefits them. and they would determine benefit not based upon things like a civic society or providing the most opportunity to as many people, but it would be rather, how can I accrue more than those around me, thereby increasing my purchasing power, my power broadly speaking in society. And so those bitch-ass roads, what they indicate, and the reason why they are one of the first things that come up is because it basically is a perfect manifestation of a value system that says we want to include everyone in society, that everyone in some way has the capacity and the ability to contribute to society, even if they're not doing so at that very moment, and that everyone should in some way, because of the social contract that we have, everyone should enjoy at least a basic minimum, and we argue over what the basic minimum is, of the output of society. And that's why it comes up first. But just because it comes up first doesn't mean we're trying to fool anybody. It's just that libertarians have a very difficult time to answer it. And I don't care if Walter Block has written an entire book on it. I've spent a decent amount of time talking to Walter Block. And, you know,
and
I got to say.
And then they can go to a fifth court, and then you flip a coin on the seventh court.
But I want to make
this time we've
an invitation.
Lowered the age of consent.
I want to remind, this is just a periodical reminder, end of the year in 2019, if you're a libertarian and you want to discuss any of this or any other issues, you can call in at 646-257-3920, or you can tweet at us, and we will always endeavor to have you on the program and discuss those topics. And you can start by telling me what kind of libertarian you are and how there's no other libertarians that know what they're talking about. And then we can take it from there.
Some libertarians think this and this. Isn't it a problem for you, Sam, though, that potholes have been extinct for a year and a half? Don't you remember? I mean, nobody's seen a pothole for a year and a half.
Nobody. Oh, boom. Oh, yes, we did. There you go. Potholes have gone away.
So when you read the Domino's example, I think you realize that your obsession with hoe-ass roads have been revealed as another liberal totalitarian boondoggle.
Okay, chat, listen, I love Samuel Cedar, and I like Emma Vigeland, but listen to the golden age of Majority Report. I'm sorry, but this is the golden age of Majority Report. J.B. Peck, Michael Brooks... I mean, like, let's go. The golden age. 2019 is actually further away than 1938. You're so right, actually. You are so right. Like, Michael Brooks was able to unify so many people that would never unify. I mean, like, his death is absolutely pisses me off, like, so fucking much. Holy shit. All right, what were we talking about? We were talking about how Bernie Sanders is right. There's been a lot of discussion about the Bernie Sanders.
And these are corporations whose main argument is, we just can't find Americans to do this work, and we just need to go all over the world to bring people in. If you listen to them, they will tell you two things. First, in terms of low-skilled jobs, they say they need foreign workers to do the jobs that Americans just won't do. And then, Madam President, this is what really gets me. They tell us that they need more H-1B visas because Americans are just not smart enough to be computer professionals, engineers, university professors. Just can't find anybody to be a university professor. Accountants, I guess Americans don't add very well. We can't do that work. Financial analysis. Nurses, I guess we just don't have the capability of producing nurses. Psychologists, Americans, I guess, can't do that. Lawyers. My God, if there's anything the United States is capable of producing are lawyers, but I guess we need more lawyers to come into this country as well, and elementary school teachers. Madam President, I guess the young people who graduate college in America are not quite qualified to be school teachers. Now, Madam President, if Americans won't take low-skilled jobs that pay poverty-level wages, and presumably if they're not smart enough to do high-skilled jobs, I think the question we have to ask is what kind of jobs are going to be available for the American people. We can't do low-skilled jobs. We can't do high-skilled jobs. Hey, what's there for us? And I happen to think that the Congress should be spending a lot more time discussing this issue and making it easier for us to create decent paying jobs for American workers instead of allowing corporate interests to drive wages down by importing more and more people into this country to do the work that Americans should be doing.
I saw Radlibs calling Bernie Hitler a white nationalist, a virulent racist, etc., LMAO. Actually, chat, the people calling Bernie Sanders racist for this take are the wokes that everyone hates. They are literally the people that everyone hates. They are the wokes of the day. They are the woke school. They are the people that everyone despises. And if your political movement is associated with, you will lose. And this I will say is a life experience for me, is I was very gentle on the wokes in 2019. And by the way, I consider myself woke, but I'm not, but when I say wokes, I don't mean people that they're actually not woke. They use the language of social justice to pursue liberal aims, liberal status quo aims. And they primarily use the language of social justice in order to attack people on identitarian grounds who are in favor of actually attacking the status quo. Do you see how ridiculous it is? So it's like, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Saying, I can't believe Mike from PA is talking about H-1B visas. He's a white male racist, right? Now, that's using the language of social justice, right? Like, oh, look at Mike's privilege as a white man, straight white man. Mike is an able-bodied, highly educated, straight white male citizen of America, saying that we need to have labor unions. Well, labor unions were racist in 1895. Don't you think that's problematic? That's why I support Uber. Uber should be allowed to pay its workers sub-minimum wage. They should not be considered employees. They should be given the freedom of being an independent contractor. That's what it is. That's what they do. That's the too raw, too real guy. Exactly. And my reaction to that is, you're goddamn right. I'm a straight white man. Look at my fashion style, bitch. Everybody knows I'm a straight white man. The only difference between me is I'm actually not a misogynist. Not to be a regional yinzer, but why would Biden bite the bullet for Trump on the Nippon-U.S. steel deal? Union was against it due to lacking protection for the workers, but I don't see any positive outcomes unless they somehow nationalize the U.S. steel industry. A pro-union move would potentially damage their industry is confusing me. This motherfucker thinks, oh my God. Oh my God. I sometimes forget. Like, one of the biggest problems that I have discussing things with people is I sometimes feel like I get massively condescending because I have to know if you're on my level before we have a conversation. Like, what level of remedial education do you need before we can have a conversation, right? Like, people will throw sentences out, and I know that underlying their beliefs is so many incorrect and uninformed beliefs and thoughts, or sub-thoughts. They're not even thoughts. Like, thoughts give them too much of an air of coherence. It's more of like a wit. It's like walking past a bathroom where somebody just took a shit. That is the level of thought we're talking about, right? You catch just a little bit of an unpleasant whiff, but it's not enough for you to be surrounded by it. Turn on the fan before you give me your opinion, okay? And so the idea that the United States steel industry cannot exist without a foreign capital owner. What the fuck are you talking about? Didn't we just spend the beginning of the stream talking about how capitalists serve no function but to collect surplus value? Is the United States of America not wealthy enough to own a steel mill? Does the United States of America not have the workers or the wherewithal to operate a steel mill? What are you really talking about? What you're really talking about is the idea that the United States steel industry will not be able to produce steel at a profitable, meaning below current open market value for the steel, which is, by the way, a moving target. And the reality is, of course, the United States of America can do its own steel industry. What the hell are you talking about? In fact, the United States of America is probably one of the prime places in the world for a steel industry, because we have large reserves of iron, large reserves of coal, large reserves of electrical power generation and capacity. We are, even though it's crumbling, one of the most infrastructurally impregnated countries in the world. And there's no better place in the world to produce steel than the United fucking States of America. They make steel in Japan. Do they have iron in Japan? No. Do they have coal in Japan? No. How the fuck are they making it? They're massively shipping in coal and steel to make steel in Japan. Do you think that comes at a cost? Do you think Japanese workers make little money? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? It's a crazy opinion. Now, like, the thing is, your opinion, and I don't mean this to, I'm sorry, I'm not insulting you. You're actually probably a relatively well-informed person and an intelligent person. But what has happened is the obfuscations of American political thought and ideology cloaks your eyes from the things that actually make sense. Like, that's what, like, of course the United States of America could be a top steel producer like we once were. How do we become a top steel producer is a different question. But the idea that the United States of America, like US Steel will fall if only we don't allow foreign capitalists to own it. Why the fuck would we want that? But specifically, what are you calling for, right? Like, is it a financial concern? Like, Nippon has more capital, which is, again, a construct, and the United States government can produce infinite capital at a whim. So what is this? What are you talking about? What's going on? What's going on? Maybe reconsider the point I was making instead of lambasting me and reading my chats. Oh no. Oh no. This guy he's not hearing me. He's hearing my tone and thinking that I'm calling him an idiot. Oh no. This is my biggest problem as a communicator. I'm literally not calling you an idiot. I'm calling the way of thinking that you presented idiotic and then explaining it passionately. I am not calling you an idiot. I even took a time to say that you're an intelligent person and you're probably well informed. You just have been obfuscated. I tried. You compared his opinion to Dookie Fumes, Mike. I mean, I was being poetic, I guess. Most people are listening to react, not to digest. I did try. If you go back and listen, if you clip it and play it back, it was pretty comprehensible. Not to be original user. Okay, but why would I bite the bullet? EU was against it due to lack of protection for the workers, but I don't see any positive outcome unless they somehow nationalize the U.S. industry. First of all, why is this a somehow to you, do you think? Why is this a somehow? Is steel a strategically important resource? If, for example, the United States was cut off from steel, would that be bad for, like, say China said, we're not selling any more steel to the United States, and we didn't have a steel industry, would that hurt our economy? Okay, I think we're all on the same page. The answer is yes. So there's a national interest in securing a flow of steel. Okay, awesome. All right, we're on the same page. A pro-union move that would potentially damage their industry. So what exactly was Nippon offering U.S. Steel in your mind? I don't see an outcome where they nationalize the industry. Why don't you see this outcome? Why don't you see this outcome? If you could, in a word, tell me why you don't think this outcome, you can't see this outcome. And chat, I'm going to make a prediction. The answer is political plausibility. And then my question would be, on the basis of what are you making a prediction on political plausibility? You and I both established that we think that steel is a strategically important industry. And two, that foreign ownership of our steel mills doesn't actually bring any kind of enhancement materially to the mill. So what you're really talking about is some sort of financial consideration for profitability. And it's like, well, why is it unprofitable? Why is U.S. Steel unprofitable? Is it they have really old mills that they haven't been investing in, keeping them up in modern techniques? Is it that they have large pension obligations? Is it that they have high debt? Like, what exactly is wrong with U.S. Steel as a company? I want the industry to be nationalized again. The product of union steelworkers. The union was against the Nippon deal, so I sided with them. Well, there you go. That's why he did it. He did it because the union didn't want it to happen. Personally, my take on all of this is I side with the union. However, we need to think more materially and less like a liberal. And if you want things like nationalization to take place, then you need to start openly talking about nationalization. And you need to treat it as a real policy that could be pursued. You need to actually, if you want to call yourself a socialist, you need to support socialist things, even if currently it doesn't seem plausible. You know what didn't seem plausible at all? Medicare for all. And then Bernie Sanders went out there and started talking about it. And now suddenly it's a legitimate policy that hundreds of people in Congress openly hold that 20 years ago would have been a non-starter. You create plausibility through advocacy and argument. And you start making persuasive, and you start making that position that you think is right, and you support it. Leave the liberal compromising to the liberals. Stop making assumptions about political plausibility. This is the #1 rule of my stream. I don't give a shit about your thoughts about political plausibility. I don't give a fuck what you think is politically plausible. You have no idea what's politically plausible. I don't even know what's politically plausible. I simply saw the outcome of the deal as inevitable. The media is lose their fucking minds. It won't get nationalized by the anti-Venezuela campaign incoming, and I fail to see any progress toward nationalizing it in the next 10 days. Okay, so you believe that U.S. Steel will fail within the next 4 years, and that the capitalists in charge of the Biden administration will allow it to fail. Okay, my take on that is a couple things. Number one, I actually think you're wrong. I think the thing you're going to see this is my most wild prediction. Are you guys ready for my most wild prediction of all time? I believe that you're going to see heterodox economic policies from the Trump administration because they're realizing how far behind America has fallen behind China. And the only way to get America to catch up to China is by pursuing left-wing economic policies. Now, they're going to couch those left-wing economic policies in national defense rhetoric. They're going to funnel it through the Department of Defense. It's going to be married to a Red Scare, but they're going to pursue all sorts of weird, heterodox economic policies. Now, I don't think these are going to be left-wing as far as like on the side of labor per se, but they're going to pursue things like nationalizations of rail, or at least subsidization, or it's not of rail, but of steel mills, or subsidization of steel mills through things like even just tariffs in order to protect and preserve American state capacity and economic capacity. Because if the United States gets to the point where it cannot produce steel, that makes us strategically vulnerable. And the national defense people are aware of these issues, and they don't want that to happen. That's why you're seeing the investment in things like the CHIPS Act. Why do you think that was a bipartisan bill? The CHIPS Act was a bipartisan bill because it was on the side, it was an industrialist-focused bill, meaning American industrialist capitalists are getting subsidized to increase American national capacity in things like microchips because they are a strategic imperative. So what I'm trying to say is, it's probably a good thing, man. And I want you to think more strategically. I want you to think more at a deeper level than just surface level liberalism. And I don't think that you're a dumb guy. I actually think you're a smart guy, which is why you're bringing up. This is actually a very intelligent and important issue. It's just that you came to me and you asked me a question and you got exactly the type of answer I hope you expected to get, which is something that completely reevaluated how you're supposed to think about these things. It took a perspective and took you completely in a different direction than you expected. That rejected the premise that was given to you by liberals and neoliberal capitalism and made you think in a more materialist way. And if you don't like it, if you feel like I was too mean to you and that makes you hate me, that's fine. I think everybody else got something out of it. Jerry Mike, do you think I'd be listening to chatting if I wasn't pursuing last week? Considering Trump already offshored $1,200K manufacturing job in his previous term, yes, I think it'll either fail or simply be bought up by another corporation and will leave Western PA. I find that unlikely, but it could be. It could be. I don't think you're wrong. Any specific factory may fail. You're right. And I think one of the things is Trump, I think Trump is kind of revealing the cards. You know how Trump talked about how he wanted to annex Greenland and he wanted to annex Canada? Do you guys know what that's about? It's about as the polar ice caps melt, there will be a competition for the Arctic. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of resources that become available underneath what is currently the polar ice cap. And it is true that Canada is a fake country. Like, with all due respect to Canadians, it's not a real country. And at a certain point, like, you know, the United States' imperial and strategic implications, either Canada is just a rump state that is completely subservient to the United States in every way, which is where it's kind of, it's mostly that. It's 90% of the way there. I think if I were a Canadian, I would support annexation of Canada. Because that's the only way you'll actually be able to get, like, for example, voting status to actually influence your own domestic and international policies. Because when you are a separate country from America, all of your political parties are just pantomime shows. You don't actually get to vote for anything. Annex Canada. It's not a real country. I love saying shit that's very funny. Mike, why do you think Canadians go for this shit? It's the same in Australia and even Europe. It's very true. We let them stay independent because the Quebecois are annoying as fuck. Have you never heard of a Cajun? We already have our own French weirdos. We already know what to do with them. What do you mean? Like, it's fine. We'll be fine. This is what, if you want to understand, if you're a European and you're like, what's a French Canadian like? I'll give you an example. Man, these are all Louisiana Frenchies. See, but you get my point.
C'est pas la peine que tu pas je peux avoir plus de filles que le gros chat à porc.
This is a Louisiana Cajun classic, Mike.
I don't like golf. I don't like swimming. I just like chasing them big butt women. We gonna do that butt thing. Kinda like that nookie thing. We gonna do that butt thing.
This is where Gremlo's from, by the way, chat. If you've ever been like, Gremlo's kind of odd, this is where Gremlo is from. If you've ever sensed something that was just a tiny bit off, you're like, Gremlo seems pretty cool and normal, and you're like, you're right, he does. But this is the milieu that he grew up. This is Louisiana, chat. My mom's side is the family is all Cajun, so yeah, don't hate on my family. Here's the thing, chat. I actually understand the incredible diversity of America. One of my sisters lives in New Orleans. I, lived in Florida and Virginia and Colorado and California and Nevada and Pennsylvania and Ohio. I've been all over the fucking country. I have experienced all the different regions, the Midwest, the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Upper South, the border states, the Deep South. I've been all around. I know it. I experience it. I appreciate it. Nevada. The swamps do something to you. Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, what were we going to talk about? Oh, yeah.
One day after the Cyber Tesla truck explodes.
The Cyber Tesla truck?
Now go to...
All right, here you go, chat. Here's how the Democrats are going to face off against Trump. Now, I want you to remember, chat, did I not predict this? Did I not tell you that this would happen? Somebody go find the tweet where I literally predicted how the centrist Democrats are going to work with Trump against the left.
Someone who's got some ideas how to do this. Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi of New York. Let's bring him into the conversation. The congressman has a new opinion piece for the New York Times with the headline, "Let's try something different in how we deal with Trump." And in it, he writes in part this: "As a Democratic member of Congress, I know my party will be tempted to hold fast against Mr. Trump at every turn, uniting against his bills, blocking his nominees, and grinding the machinery of the House and the Senate to a halt. That would be a mistake," he writes. "Only by working together to find compromise on parts of the president-elect's agenda can we make..."
So after basically 2 decades of the Republicans, well, it's actually 3 decades. It goes back to 1994. Basically, since the Gingrich Revolution, the Republican strategy has been obstruct, block, and fuck up any Democratic leader. 30 years of this strategy has resulted in them getting a quadfecta. And the Democrats' response is, we're gonna reward you by caving on everything. Yay, Democrats!
progress for Americans who are clearly demanding change in the economy, immigration, crime, and other top issues. He continues, this time in history is both a warning and an opportunity. My New Year's resolution is to rise above partisanship and bickering, reject extremism, and embrace common sense and keep building relationships with Republicans and Democrats to get that done. So, Congressman, let's dive into this a little bit more. But let me ask you this first. What do you say to members of your party who experienced the 4 years of Donald Trump, then his post-presidency, and very much view him as an existential threat to the nation's democracy? How do you then tell them, well, he's still someone we got to work with?
Listen, we've been attacking the President-elect Trump for years, and everybody's dissected everything he said. They've criticized everything he said, and he won. And he's not running for president again. So the next 4 years, they're going to be looking at the Republicans, and they're going to be looking at the Democrats. They're going to say, who's fighting for me? Who's looking out for the things that I care about? Same thing that Mike Barnicle just said, same thing McAuliffe said, Carville said, exact same stuff. Talk about the kitchen table issues that affect everybody's life and work on figuring out how can we get stuff done to make your life better. I'm fighting for you. If the Republicans today, are voting, they can't choose a speaker and all they're doing is fight with each other, the people are going to be like, well, what about me? What are you doing for me? So we have to start focusing on what the people want. As Barnicle just said, go out and talk to people and find out what the people are talking about and respond to what they care about.
Congress. The people want to raise taxes on the rich. What do you think about that? I'm fighting for you by helping Trump accomplish his tasks and goals.
And I basically think that you raise really good points, but it takes two to dance this particular tango. So it's one thing to say, oh, we'll of course, we'll collaborate on reasonable policies that help the American people. But those policies have to also be accepted by the other side.
Now, one of my chatters just told us, chat. Oh, here, did you find it? After Trump's win, fascists will ally with liberals by claiming that the left-wing resistance and protests are disrupting civility and so should be ruthlessly crushed. The day after Trump is sworn in, these liberals will suddenly find out how reasonable he is. Jesus loved you. He died for our sins and was resurrected. Confess your sins, believe in Jesus, and live forever in heaven. Okay. All right. I just found a special part of the Bible. This is a part of the Bible you never hear Christians in America repeat. When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Wait a minute. I missed this part. How come all these Christians don't? Wait a minute. Wait. Why don't they ever read this part? You think Christians read the Bible? No, I don't think they read the Bible. That's exactly why they are dog shit. And as one of the chatters said, this guy represents the wealthiest district in the country, in case you're wondering who this is.
Republican Party, do you have any confidence that whoever is the speaker, that the Republican Party is going to be talking even the same language that you're talking now, and is not going to be pursuing an extremist agenda that, in fact, Democrats have no choice but to oppose?
Gene, that I can't control.
Sorry, fourth nation. The chatter, the chair of the Dick Cheney Democratic Caucus says it's actually the fourth wealthiest nationwide, but the wealthiest district in New York. Thank you for the correction. This is the type of quality chatter we get here at the Central Committee. That's why I love this community. Because the thing about this community, okay, I'm gonna brag about myself for a second. And if you're new to me, if you're new to this content, you're like, oh God, I hate how Mike does this. I totally understand. It's very cringe. In a normal situation, praising yourself about how great you are is incredibly cringe. If we were meeting in real life, I wouldn't do it. But I have to sell myself a little bit as a creator. So just bear with me for a second. One thing you'll find in this community is that when I touch on the thing you're an expert in, you will say, wow, Mike has an informed opinion. That was a relatively well-informed opinion on that point. Let me share more information with Mike. You're not going to run into me talking about something you're an expert in and then go, wow, Mike is an idiot. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. That does not happen. You're speaking in a large lecture hall. You're forgiven. Thank you. I don't know if very many lecture halls have 3,000 seats, but it's a small, it's an auditorium. It's a large venue, a medium-sized venue. It's not an arena. That's Hassan, but it's a large venue. Mike doesn't talk about shit he doesn't know. That's cheating. If you start hearing me talking about like pop music, you know I'm a bullshitter. Mike, why does it take the energy levels of an electron must always be quantized within a potential well? From what I understand about a electron, they have a mass that's so low it's like undetectable. Isn't that right? One of the things that's really interesting about photons. This is something that is the thing that cooks my brain the most. They do have mass, but it's incredibly small. One of the things that really cooks my brain about photons is that when a photon is created, it instantly arrives at its destination from its subjective perspective. So in other words, when you look up into the sky, let's say you get a telescope, you go to a really dark mountaintop, you look up into the sky, and you see a distant galaxy. That light, when it impacts your fucking retina, from the perspective of the photon, it was generated in a distant galaxy billions of light years away, and it instantaneously hit your eye. Even though it took a billion years for the photon to physically travel from our perspective, it took a billion years for the photon to get here. But from the photon's perspective, it instantly got there. Not instantaneously, you're seeing it in the past. Wrong. I'm talking about the perspective of the photon itself, not your perspective. Time is affected by how fast you're going. The faster you go, the more time slows down for you. From the perspective of the light, it instantaneously transports to its destination. Technically, the photon may get slowed down. True. Okay, now we're getting even smarter. There could be like some sort of gravity lensing effect. Good point. The photon doesn't have a perspective. They dumb as shit. C is a functional limit of speed in both space and time. If you move C in space, you cannot move in time. Exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, because everything travels through place and time at light speed. By accelerating in the spatial domain, you basically just shift your speed from your time speed to your space speed. Except the thing is, it's a reference frame. This is what makes no sense. That's why it's crazy. You have to work with Trump to stop Trump. Do you think that capitalists will start World War III if a non-Western nation invents the replicator? Okay, let's say that something like the replicator were invented. They would 100% execute you for having an unlicensed replicator. They would try their hardest to contain the replicator. But they would fail. But they would try. Replicate nukes day one. Yep. The problem with something like the replicator is we would need, like, anybody, like, the most dipshit morons would replicate nukes instantly. You're so right. You're so fucking right. I think in Star Trek universe, they say the replicator can't replicate certain things, but I'm pretty sure they've never talked about replicating nuclear weapons. I don't know that they've ever talked about that. Have you seen the psych class teacher who says he gives the entire class an option to unanimously vote to get a 95% on the final exam, but it always fails? My favorite thing about that story was that only like 10 people typically get above a 95. Here's the thing, and I would say this. I would get in front of the class, and I would say, I am one of the people who is going to get greater than a 95. But I promise you this. If I ever find out that any of you voted against giving everyone a 95, I will reveal it to the entire class. If it ever slips out, if anybody votes, we will come after your ass. We will make your life a living hell. I will do what's called threats. Not actual legal threats, but social threats. And why do you need to do that? Because, chat, that's the only way to solve the prisoner's dilemma. The only way to solve this prisoner's dilemma, to force cooperation, is to threaten people who are going to betray. There has to be consequences for betrayal. And you've got to make it an iterative prisoner's dilemma, not a single event. So be like, listen. And in fact, what I would do is this. I would say, okay, everybody, we're going to vote. Everybody vote in pairs. And I'm going to randomly draw what the pairs are. And you're going to show what you vote for, or threes. Actually, three, groups of three. That way there can't be disagreement. So that way, okay. I'm going to randomly put us in groups of three, and you're all going to vote together, and you're going to see what everybody else voted. I would fucking hack this shit. I would get a 95 in this class without having to fucking take the test. There's no fucking way I want to come in and take a fucking test that I don't have to take. I'm getting the 95. And the reason why I'm able to come up with these strategies is because I know about psychology.
One day, your boss comes to the company with a suspiciously generous offer. Everybody gets to pick their own bonus between $1 and $1 million. But there's a catch. If you pick more than 2/3 of the average, then you get nothing. To discourage you from being greedy, they say. Your boss walks away confident that they're not going to have to pay anything. Why? Because as everybody knows, all the employees at your company are perfectly logical. Nobody would pick more than $666,666 because even if everybody else picked $1 million, 2/3 of the average would never be above that. But then, since everybody knows that nobody would pick more than $666,666, nobody would pick more than $444,444. But then nobody would pick more than 2/3 of that, and then 2/3 of that, and so on, until everybody's just picking $1. But then 2/3 of the average would be 2/3 of $1, and so nobody would get anything. However, your boss has made a critical flaw. You see, because the employees are all perfectly logical, they've unionized. They realize that by pooling their raises, they can have some people pick $1 million to raise the average. This is optimized when about 36.6% of people pick $1 million, and then everybody else picks about $422,000. After dividing it up, everybody goes home with a nice $267,000. If you want a fun little problem, try proving that this is actually the most they could get with sharing.
That's how you win in life, chat. The only way to win in life is to realize you're not going to be the Mr. Optimizer who's smarter than everybody else. The best way to win in life is to be part of a collective. Because, I've met a lot of really talented people. I've met a lot of really intelligent people, a lot of really strong people, a lot of really attractive people, a lot of really socially gifted people in my life, and not one of them on their own can stand up to a group of 20 people. I mean, not one of them. You get 20 mediocre people and they can take out the best of the best. Ape strong together. Power trumps competency most of the time. This is one of the most important things to learn. Of course. Collectivization works.
Control what they do. I can only control.
Back to this guy, back to the Democrats surrendering to Trump, just like I predicted they would.
What I do, and we can only control what we do. We're reaching out our hand and saying, hey, let's work together. Let's try and accomplish things together. If they say, no, my way or the highway, forget about it, I'm just going to do what I want with this crazy right-wing agenda, then the people are going to see that. But we as Democrats are saying, okay, let's try and work together to increase people's wages, create more middle-class jobs, raise the minimum wage, do something about child tax credit, implement the PRO Act for unions.
Did you guys see how I owned Fetterman's former chief of staff or whatever the fuck? I was doing this on the other monitor yesterday. This is sometimes I get bored and I start trolling people on Twitter during stream. This is a very bad thing that I do, but it is what it is. Let's go take a look at it because it's very funny.
Bernie's run in 2016 was perhaps the worst thing to ever happen to the Democratic Party because it have a bunch of leftist false hopes followed by an incredible persecution complex.
Guys, it's not a complex if they're actually persecuting you, number one. And number two, losing one election, who gives a fuck? This is one thing that I try to tell people. How old are you? Let's say the average person in this stream is 30 years old, just to make it easy math. That means there's been 15 congressional elections in your life, roughly. Why are you crying and bawling your eyes out over one? You know what I mean? Like, okay, you lost one election. Okay, you're going to have another 20, 25 congressional elections in your life. Who gives a fuck? You lost this one, on to the next one. And he said, I don't think it's the worst thing, but a frustrating byproduct is that it spawned a generation of progressives seemingly were focused on pressuring politicians to take ideologically rigid stances rather than securing power to accomplish material change. Not good. And I said, Fetterman's entire political career was drafting off of Bernie's run, you total fraud.
John's political career actually predates Bernie's 2016 run, but I'd agree that there's some overlap in their respective appeals. Not quite sure why I earned the total fraud designation, though. I said, he was a fucking nothing before he drafted off of Bernie in his losing 2016 Senate campaign. He took Bernie's endorsement at his campaign launch when he primaried Lieutenant Governor Mike Stack in 2018. Who are you fooling? I think you're trying to shoehorn your Fetterman disdain into a point I was making about the impact of Bernie's 2016 campaign on the progressive rank and file. I wasn't knocking Bernie or denying his impact on many things in our politics. Quite the opposite, actually. I said, yes, it's a shame that grifters like Fetterman have abused the trust of voters by drafting off of Bernie and then launching himself into the arms of extremist organizations like AIPAC when he finally got into office. I know John Fetterman from before he was in any important office. I was there from the beginning. He personally betrayed me with his heel turn and many of the people that made him a politician. He was basically saying, I'm Bernie Sanders in the 2016 race. Then in 2018, when he launched his primary of Mike Stack, he did so from the left with Bernie's endorsement in a Philadelphia campaign launch. The idea that, oh man, Bernie Sanders, he's pressuring politicians to take ideologically spawned a generation of progressive. Actually, what happened is frauds like John Fetterman have made people incredibly cynical and jaded. Michael, he cares about getting views. He wanted Trump to win. That was his goal. So she's objectively correct. No, my goal was to have good policies enacted. I don't give a shit about my views, which went up after Biden won. Who cares? Who fucking cares? Why do people post it? By the way, people post this kind of like attack the messenger guy shit when they can't argue against your points. You'll notice that this happens when people will be like, actually, Mike is just a streamer and he only cares about his views. And it's like, no, let's take a look at that. Let's go take a look at that, chat. Guys, how did my views do? Guys, how do my views do? Let's go take a look. Here is when, here's my views in October. Let's do by year. Let's go to November of 2020. My viewership was, okay, let's go to the year, let's go before, okay, during Trump, the month before Trump won, or Biden won, my viewership was 600 average viewers. Then Biden won. My viewership immediately started going up. December, there's always a slight decline in December because, you know, holidays and shit. And then look at that. Biden sworn in, and I became a 2,400 viewer Andy. Would you look at that? It's almost as if me caring about views has absolutely nothing to do with the outcome of these elections. I'm perfectly happy with my viewership, whether Bernie or Trump wins or Biden wins. That has no bearing on my viewership, you dumb pieces of shit. After Biden, leftists need to escape the liberal jubilee, and we drifted into alternative media. Maybe you're the wrong person to ask, but how do I stop being irrationally angry at idealistic libs? Well, the first thing is liberals are not idealistic at all. They are actually not idealistic. They are purely socially oriented. All right, this is what you need to understand about liberals. They are opportunistic and socially oriented. That's why they're liberals, because they are adopting the it is like the guy from American Psycho. What's his goddamn name? Fuck. It's Bateman. Yeah, let's say Bateman talking about politics.
Over there. Come on, Bryce. There are a lot more important problems than Sri Lanka to worry about.
Like what?
Well, we have to end apartheid for one, and slow down the nuclear arms race, stop terrorism, and world hunger. We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless, and oppose racial discrimination and promote civil rights, while also promoting equal rights for women. We have to encourage a return to traditional moral values. Most importantly, we have to promote general social concern, and less materialism in young people.
Patrick, how thought-provoking.
Now, Patrick Bateman is a serial killer, but do you see how he understands that in order to hide among normies, he needs to adopt this kind of general faux progressive bullshit? Notice that none of that was based about class or anything. It was just like kind of general, I'm a good person, I have adopted all the good person beliefs. That is the average liberal. They are socially oriented, okay? And they want to present themselves as being a good person. But when you actually talk to them about like real shit, their class position will come out.
they'll start trashing things like Bernie Sanders and progressivism and socialism and labor unions, and they will use the language of social justice to attack real, actual left-wing power, redistributions of wealth and power. Liberals and leftists hating each other is a gift to the far right. Liberals have nothing to offer the left. Nothing. Every place the liberals operate, any power you grant to liberals, any power, will be used against you. Listen to Patrick Stewart. He has something that he said, and this is an important thing that I try to remember. Patrick Stewart will tell you exactly how you should treat them. Wait, where the fuck is it? Oh, there it is.
Don't trust the liberals. They will betray you.
Don't trust the liberals. They will betray you. That's that. Patrick Stewart is right. Jean-Luc Picard is right. In 2025, I will continue to use liberals and leftists interchangeably because that's the way the right sees it. And to them, we are all equally the enemy. And I say, stop trying to conflate your absolutely despised ideology with us. Here's the issue, though. The average voter can't tell the difference. I know people who don't like the left because they think leftists are in charge of California and causing homelessness. Most people don't already agree with leftism, thinks more left means more liberal. That's our job to say it's not. If you hate California, you should love me. If you think California is run like shit, you should be voting for people who agree with me. California is Stacy, who is one of the worst accounts on Twitter, by the way, by far. Here's the issue, though. The average voter can't tell the difference. And I say, liberals like Stacy here are in charge of California and are the cause of its homelessness crisis. And yet conservatives call it communist California, which is why it's our job to say, hey, do you think that California sucks? Vote for democratic socialists. Vote for actual left-wingers. Mike, I introduced your stream to some lib relatives a couple days ago. Please hugbox them, but seriously try to help them find their way after the election because they asked me since I talked about politics sometimes. Okay, listen. Just because you have been called a liberal, because in America we have this brain rot where we say, Bernie Sanders is very liberal. Bernie Sanders is not a liberal. There's an attempt to try to conflate liberalism with leftism. Liberalism is about defending the status quo. Just so everybody understands, if you're unhappy with the way America is today, then you're unhappy with liberal hegemony, as what it's called. We live in a liberal status quo. And both the Democrats and, this is ironic, the Republicans are liberal parties. Now, there are some groups within both of those parties that are not liberal. There is fascists and anti-liberal or illiberal reactionaries in the conservative MAGA umbrella. And there are, social democrats and democratic socialists and even, more strident forms of left-wing anti-liberalism in the umbrella of the left, right? But liberals are not the left. They are the center. Bernie is a liberal. That's a fact. No. You confuse someone hiding their power level with being a liberal. Bernie Sanders is not a liberal. Bernie Sanders is hiding his power level. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand Bernie Sanders and you've never read anything about him and you don't know his biography and you're not very well informed. Let's end the conflation of liberal and leftist. Oh no. In short, leftists are not satisfied with the current political, economic, and social institutions as liberals are. The two groups are distinguishable in several ways, yet many right-wing politicians, you conflate the two under umbrella term the left. The conflation of the two terms hinders the political success of liberals. You know what happens when liberals separate themselves from the left? Why the fuck should we dictate our language? Okay, so first of all, okay, what was I saying? Oh yeah, what happens when liberals separate themselves from the left and like things like organized labor? Do you know what happens to their political support? They get 5% of the vote. Nobody is a actual liberal. All right, let's go back to watching a liberal work with fascists.
We're gonna do that.
Oh yeah. I often hear max leftists, MLs and such call Bernie a lib. Are there validity to their claims? There are actually no Marxist-Leninists in America. There are members of the intelligentsia. There are members of individuals who have opinions, but there are no MLs in America because ML believes in a worker party and democratic centralism. Can somebody show me the Workers' Party connected to the masses that has voted to call Bernie Sanders a liberal? Because if that hasn't happened, then they're just doing liberal opinion making themselves. They're doing social media content as an individual. There ain't a fucking ML. There's no democratic centralism. There is no, party line that they're repeating. They're just a guy. That's liberalism. There, I just checkmated every online ML.
This stuff. We're going to work together with you to see if you really believe in working families or not. And it's up to them to decide whether or not they're going to respond in kind.
Congressman, it's historian Doug Brinkley here. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Are you going to be going to Trump's inaugural? Will you be standing there?
Of course. Absolutely. He's the president of the United States of America.
Do you think many Democrats will boycott it? Do you have any feeling going on?
I really don't have any sense of that. You know, I don't see as much. I was first elected in 2016 when Trump was first elected. I took office January of 2017. Trump soon thereafter, and there was a lot more of the resistance movement back then. And resistance is appropriate. I resisted him trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. I resisted him trying to deport Dreamers. We can do resistance, but it can't be all resistance. Let's fight for the people and what the people care about. And, not showing up for the president of the United States inauguration is I think.
I thought he was a fascist. I thought it was the most important. So everything they said about Donald Trump is now just, I guess it's not true. Because why? He's in power now. And this is to link back to what I was saying about liberals. Liberals are socially oriented individuals. They are hierarchically oriented individuals. And they want to present in a narcissistic fashion the idea that they're a good person. They're not they're not an ideologue. They don't have an ideology. They don't have core beliefs. Speaker vote? Oh shit. Is Johnson going to lose?
I think an irresponsible thing. Show up. We're for America. This is an American institution. We believe in the peaceful transfer of power. And let's do our best to work together. If they won't do it, if Trump won't do it, if Mike Johnson or whoever the Republicans pick as speaker won't do it, that's their problem. We as Democrats should be trying to get things done on behalf of the people.
So, Congressman, you just mentioned Mike Johnson, who later today will stand for a vote to see whether he will remain as.
Remember how on Election Day, Libs and Assad Shaq got angry because you called the Democrats bluff and didn't vote for Kamala? Oh, yeah. I'm happy I didn't.
As Speaker, what's your assessment of where that.
Marxist-Leninism believes in building a vanguard party of working-class voters who aggressively pursue revolutionary politics, not reformism. So that's true. Like, if the way vanguardism is supposed to work is that the most politically advanced members of the working class need to build a vanguard party where they pursue politics to create a moment of rupture where they could seize the state in what's called the dictatorship of the proletariat, which overturns the dictatorship of what? The dictatorship of the bourgeoisie.
That vote stands, but also, do you think, I know he's a Republican, but do you think, is he the man who should remain in that post?
Listen, I started with Mike Johnson. We both came to Congress at the same time. He's a nice man. I disagree with him on a lot of different issues, but he's a nice person.
What the fuck does that mean? So goddamn tired of that. Oh, that person's a nice person. When somebody says someone's a nice person, it means I guess they haven't punched them in the face yet. Like, what does that even mean anymore?
He seems to have the support of most of his colleagues. There are other people that have 40 votes or 50 votes or 60 votes. He's the only one that seemed to be able to cobble together the group. Who knows what's going to happen with these guys? I think it would be a big mistake for them to cave in to these far right-wing Freedom Caucus people. It's one of the reasons they got nothing done over the past 2 years under Republican Congress. I don't think they should cave. I'm voting for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker, and I think every other Democrat will as well. The Republicans, they got to get their act together.
All right. Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi of New York. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. His opinion piece, The New York Times, available online now.
All right, chat. They're doing the speaker vote soon. So let's talk about this. Johnson, what would it be? Johnson, what do we call the Johnson supporters? Speaker of the House vote. Johnson jobbies? Dick Riders? Dick Riders? Dick Riders in right now. We should cover this a little bit. I forgot this was happening today. 300 people watching the White House press briefing on MSNBC, chat. 393 watching. I've got bigger streams than MSNBC.
Allie, about 2 hours to go now. We know Massey is a no for Johnson. Who else are you watching? There's a lot.
They could only wait. They need everybody. They need everybody. Johnson's not going to win. They need everybody.
A lot of names we're watching, though all of them are sort of leaving the door open, hanging out on the fence, however you want to say it. They are not hard-nosed, and that's really important when you think about the stakes here for Mike Johnson, because you're right, Anna, to point out that there's no margin for error because he has already lost the one vote that he can afford to lose. I'll put up for you on the screen, though, a list of some other names that we are looking at closely. The thing that most of these people have in common is they are on the more ultra-conservative side of this Republican conference spectrum. For instance, I'm looking at someone like Congressman Chip Roy, who I spoke to this morning. He's sort of at the center of this hubbub and these negotiations because there are some members who seem to say that if he were to be put in charge of the powerful Rules Committee, that they would seemingly get in line behind Johnson. That could present some problems, though, because Roy has shown a willingness to buck leadership, and putting him in charge of the Rules Committee would basically give him a say over what gets to the floor and what doesn't in terms of legislation. I actually caught up with Chip Roy just in the last half hour or so, and I asked him, is it enough if you become chair of the Rules Committee? Would that get you behind Johnson? He merely told me that's not what this is about for him. For him, it's more about procedure and sort of breaking apart the idea of multiple bills being voted on together, sort of slowing down the congressional procedure here in Congress. But again, you see Mike Johnson there saying he's not going to be negotiating, seemingly learning the lessons of Kevin McCarthy, who sort of negotiated away the gig before he even had it. And now that leaves us to what these members will do when they actually vote. For his part, the president-elect, Donald Trump, who is often at the center of these dealings for the House Republican
Yeah, by negotiating,
has merely wished Johnson good
you
luck today.
empower.
We'll see where that gets him.
Allie, we heard Johnson say he's not going to be making deals with anybody. So what is he doing to try to win over the holdouts?
Still having conversations, though. I don't know where the line is
Mike,
between
pull
a
up Gremlo's
conversation.
stream. Uh-oh. Did he fail already? Okay, this is he has a better link.
Yeah, it's you know, we're still all digesting the vote tally here, but as the clerk officiates the votes and, you know, goes through the roll to make sure they have it right, it appears that Mike Johnson has fallen short of winning the Speaker's gavel on this first ballot. As was mentioned,
voted
three
other, Chad?
lawmakers voted for somebody other than Johnson on the floor, 3 Republicans. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan, Keith Self for Byron Donalds, and Thomas Massey for Tom Emmer. And because of that outcome, that leaves Johnson with just support from just 216 Republicans. All 215 Democrats supported Hakeem Jeffries. And that 216 number is problematic for Mike Johnson because it's short of the 218 that he needed to clinch the gavel. So this is not official yet. The clerk is going through it, but according to my tally, it looks like Johnson is going to fall short of the gavel on this first ballot.
And that's the same tally we have here on the set. Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, is with us as well. Could Ralph Norman change his vote from Jim Jordan, and could Congressman-elect Self change his vote from Donald?
I mean, theoretically, they can all change their vote. The 3 of them can change their vote if they want to. It's possible that the lawmakers who voted for Johnson could change their vote on the second ballot. Anything is possible here, but it's definitely going to require a whole host of conversations, perhaps some negotiations, to get Johnson the amount of support that he needs to clinch the gavel.
When do you expect that, if it takes place, a second round of voting?
Yeah, it's all a very tenuous situation right now, moving target, moving playing field. The first order of business will be the clerk officiating the results, and then we'll go from there to see if Mike Johnson decides to huddle with his conference, huddle with those lawmakers, or get back into another round of voting.
Michael Schnell, have you been able to be on the floor at all?
I was just in the House chamber, just ran down. I was up there for the vote, yes.
Have you had a chance to talk to some of the dissenting Republicans?
Not yet. Folks have not left the floor yet. Everyone is waiting to see the final tally and then see what Johnson decides to go from there.
Michael Schnell of The Hill, thank you for a few minutes and the update. We will be back in touch with you this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Well, Matt Green of Catholic University, could those 2 members, we don't expect Tom Massey to change his vote, but could Ralph Norman and Congressman-elect Self change their votes and to Mike Johnson?
Well, that's why it's great that C-SPAN's got these cameras, so we can watch Speaker Johnson and his allies trying to have these huddles that you just heard about, these negotiations. And we can see him now sort of walking up the aisle here of the House chamber. I'm sure he's having these conversations, his allies are, whether they can be moved now or not. It may very well be that they're not going to change their votes for this round, but perhaps they would for a second round. But again, as you heard, the question is whether they would do that right away or if they want to hold out their votes for something they can get in exchange for those votes from the Speaker.
So he just left the floor. Speaker Johnson just left the floor. By the way, who is controlling the proceedings today? Because there is no Speaker-elect.
Right. So it's the clerk.
There is no Congress right now.
Well, the Congress has started, but the clerk, the acting clerk, the person who opened the proceedings today, is technically the person who is running the House until a Speaker is chosen.
Because there are no members sworn in at this point.
Right. They're members-elect at this point. They haven't been sworn in, but more importantly, we don't have a Speaker. And so until that happens, the highest-ranking officer of the House, who is the clerk, is in charge.
Now, you were doing a lot of math. Do you mind holding up those sheets? I just want people to see what was going on during the vote count, because we had lots here. Why don't you...
These people are insanely destructive. Let's be clear. This is a stunningly stupid suicidal strategy. These guys need psychiatrists. This is self-destructive as I've ever seen a political party be.
Look, I use this language very deliberately. These people are insanely destructive. What is round two going to be? So you have one guy gets 186 votes right now. Another guy gets 3. Actually, 3 people get 1 each. So what's round two going to be like? The same 3 guys are going to hold out, and they're going to hold out forever? I mean, it's certainly their constitutional right. They're independently elected. But let's be clear. This is a stunningly stupid, suicidal strategy, which only weakens the Republican Party, weakens President Trump, makes it harder to fix America.
Hi, Mike. Why are they voting for the Speaker? Oh, that's a good question. Basically, every 2 years, we get another Congress. The previous Congress expires, and there's no longer anybody in the position called Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is elected by a majority of the House, and it is the job that must be filled first. So these are all the recently elected and sworn in members of Congress picking the Speaker of the House. We currently do not have a Speaker of the House. So they vote for Speaker every 2 years because that's called the Speaker election. Very simple.
Going on while this was happening.
Legislative body works, including the House, is what is the majority? And you can look at the majority in terms of just party affiliation and say, in this case, well, Republicans have more seats, so they're the majority. But there's other kinds of majorities as well. So one kind of majority is a procedural majority, which is, do you have the ability to control the agenda, to decide what comes to the floor? Another is a policy agenda. Do you have a majority to pass the things that you want? And I think what he was referring to was what we saw quite a bit in the previous Congress, which is even though Republicans had a numerical majority, they had more Republicans than Democrats who were in the House, there weren't enough willing to vote with the party on some key issues involving the agenda or involving legislation. And they would often have to turn to Democrats to get the votes they needed. So I think what he's saying there is, look, you may have more people, there are more people on your side than our side, but you have more people willing to defect.
You don't have to be part of Congress to be the Speaker, no.
When it comes to things that really, really matter.
They can pick anyone they want.
All right, we were just seeing Steve Scalise, the majority leader, and Tom Emmer is the majority whip, correct? The Republican whip. The whip has confirmed that there will be another vote. So, and Speaker Johnson has left the floor.
And the thing about this is, chat, is that this happens infinitely. The Speaker election is a privileged election, which that means is under the House of Representatives, they can't do anything but vote for the Speaker. Until they have a Speaker, they can't do anything else. So the Congress is not officially constituted until there is a Speaker. So they will continue to vote on this over and over and over and over again. Anytime the Congress meets, they have to vote for the Speaker first.
And let's watch the floor for a few.
Would an infinite vote be a good or bad thing? Well, do you think Congress needs to pass any laws?
A few seconds and let's see what's going on.
How does this potentially affect January 6th electoral vote? They can't do it because they can't join a joint session because they don't actually have a constituted body. So the answer is if they don't have a Congress to count the electoral votes, then they can't count the electoral votes. That would cause a constitutional crisis because it's never happened. Why is there a child there? It's probably a relative of a congressperson. I don't know why C-SPAN is zooming into this guy's crotch, but okay. Is this Mike's Johnson? Like, what's going on here? This guy, is he flirting? He's making I'm flirting face. Like, look at these look at this! Am I right? Am I right? He's trying to rizzle her. Like, what's going on with this face? That's a very Trumpian smile.
We are back live at the House of Representatives, first day of the 119th, the election of the Speaker. Round one voting is nearly complete, or we're waiting for it to be gavelled out. Tom Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Professor Matthew Greene is here on the set with us. Professor Greene, what do you see in that picture?
That's a great shot of two members of the House Republican Conference who have a tradition of causing trouble and pushing back against party leaders from time to time. In this case, one of them did vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker, but the other did not.
And is Tom Massey, is there any lobbying that can be done, in your view, to Tom Massey to get him?
You know, this is something that's going on the floor, and I can't speak for Massey, but I will say he has a tradition of being a sort of a lone gun, if you will, and doing his own thing. And he has said early and often he would not vote for Johnson, which certainly suggests that he is not open to persuasion. But
Massey is kind of like a weirdo libertarian who occasionally makes really good votes. But the reason why he makes good votes is because he's a type of person that used to exist a lot in America, which is an isolationist conservative nationalist. So basically somebody's like, America first. I actually want American government to fund America, and we should stop doing all this empire shit because it doesn't help us. And we should cut back taxes and government, and we should just focus on, America. We should pull back. We should stop, supporting Israel's genocide. That has nothing to do with us. We should stop, trying to fight a war with China and Taiwan. So he has like decent takes, but for the wrong reasons.
Would you be feeling?
Well, Democrats would obviously prefer to be in the majority.
Do you think it's more possible to vote for a speaker that a couple Democrats give Johnson the position? I don't know. Democrats stand united behind Rep. Jeffries. Huh? He just put Senator Booker in the photo? I was like trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. Why did you have Booker? I get it. Our face blind king. Our face blind king. He wasn't racist, guys. He's just face blind. Do you have any tips for someone trying to become a confident public speaker? My number one tip for being a successful public speaker or confident public speaker is to know what you're talking about and believe in what you're saying. That's my tip. Public speaking is like anything that's slightly uncomfortable. The more you do of it, the less you can adapt yourself to it, and the less you start to care. The other thing is, like, what are you worried about? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to go up there and you're going to, give a mush mouth speech. Your belt's going to break and your pants are going to fall down. Like, what exactly is the word? You're going to go up there and you're going to blank. Okay, you go up there and you blank. What is going to be the long-term consequences? Like, just run through the worst case scenario, and you realize the worst case scenario is You kind of blank for a second. You get embarrassed. You're like, gosh, I can't remember what I was going to say. Sorry, folks. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they move on to the next speaker or whatever. Like, what exactly? And then maybe later you build up your confidence and you go back out there and you say, look, I found my notes. I'm ready to go. Like, what are you worried about exactly? Like, nobody's going to remember that. The next day, people are going to forget. Like, you know, even if it's like a really important speech, like no one's going to remember that shit in a month or two. But if you give a really fire speech, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives. So the downsides are basically nothing, and the upsides are incredible. So it's like one of the easiest. It's like, okay, if I do really well, it could change my life. If I do really poorly, people will forget about it. The only time that is not true is when your entire job is to give speeches, and then you do it really catastrophically bad, and you look demented. If your name is Joe Biden, this advice doesn't apply. But if you're going to be the president of the United States, I hope you've practiced public speaking a bit. Will you listen to the Nazi space with Musk and the German chief Nazi Weidel on January 9th? Gonna be awful shit. I can't believe, I mean, Musk is just like, he just hates humanity. That's all it is. Like, he just hates humanity. Being student president for 4 years, the thing I learned about public speaking is the ones who are most scared of it are always the ones who don't know what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. The better you know what you're talking about, the more easily you'll be able to recover. You know, the more you know your shit, the more you can just bullshit about it. Every Curtis Yarvidite tech bro hates everyone not in tech. Yeah. Also, being able to admit when you don't know something actually shows humility. If you don't know something, why are you talking about it in a public forum? You know what I mean? Like, if I don't know what you're talking about, just shut the fuck up. Learn. You should be in learn mode. Like, if I were Jake Uger, I would shut the fuck up and never consent. Shut the fuck up. Never consent. Shut the fuck up. Not because I don't think Jake knows anything. Like, if I wanted advice on, you know, how to, you know, take a big fat dump, I would call up Cenk. I'd be like, what's your strat? Handle constipation. I'm sure he's got a lot of informed fucking experience on that. But on, like, you know, other shit, nah, I don't think so. Wait, Elon Musk is the modern day Einstein? Oh, no.
Mike Johnson. And Keith Self was kind of a bit of a surprise, too, wasn't he? He wasn't on our list of to watches.
They're leaving the floor.
With the speaker, right? There they go. All right. And again, to remind viewers, the gavel has not come down on the first vote, so it is still open.
I think they're trying to get people to change their vote.
Could change their mind.
They're trying to get people to change their vote
both of their
to
votes.
Johnson.
The vote count is currently
before they have to do a second vote.
For Mike Johnson.
They don't want to have to do a second vote, so they're going to people because the vote is still open, so people can change their vote.
Tom Massey,
they're trying to get the people who didn't vote for him to go and say, I'm changing my vote to Johnson, so they can say he got it done in the first vote.
Mike Johnson needs 2 of 3.
That's basically what's happening.
On the first vote. Am I correct in my
believe
math?
That's correct. He needs 218.
And he's at 216.
Right. If those 3 who voted for someone else will vote for a named candidate in the next round, then it's still 218, so he'll need 2 of those 3.
And we just saw the 3 gentlemen, Ralph Norman, Keith Self, and Mike Johnson, walk off the floor.
So those conversations are happening. There's negotiations going on. Would love to be in that room.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason we are able to get some of these shots that we're getting is because C-SPAN cameras are on the floor. The speaker is allowed C-SPAN cameras to be at the opening of the Congress. Usually we do not control the cameras. They're controlled by the House of Representatives. But today we have that option. There's Tom Massey.
Oh, they're zooming in.
Marjorie
Nice.
Taylor Greene.
Like, if I was a Republican holdout, what would you ask for?
Tom Massey,
suitcase
is there any
nuclear
chance that he
bomb.
would change his vote? I see he is not part of the group of 3 that went off the floor.
Well, I suppose that's pretty telling. He's not in the conversation. It
Elon
doesn't
is the
bode
modern day
well
Henry
for him
Ford.
changing his vote.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's, again,
Definitely
anything is
in
possible.
all senses.
But it's
Okay, hold on, chat. We got to find something that's funny to look at. Let's make fun of Jake for a second. Can we make fun of Jake? Jake Uger is a grifter, and he fucking sucks. There, I said it. At this point, even like Destiny Orbiters figured it out.
When I co-founded Just Democrats,
Dollcast is Brianna Wu's podcast with a bunch of basically trans medicalists, conservative trans women, basically. And it is bordering on like, it says most, okay, it's the most turfy you could be while also being trans. It's actually batshit crazy, the political position that Brianna Wu is now taking.
When I co-founded Just Democrats, progressive meant Bernie Sanders, right?
That's right.
So all the economically populist positions that we love, Medicare for all, paid family leave, etc., right? And it also meant on social issues, we protect gay marriage. We were for gay marriage decades before the Democratic leadership were, etc. We protect trans rights. We protect all of our rights, right? But then, unfortunately, some of the folks who got elected in Just Democrats, like AOC, etc., and some leaders online said, no, progressive means the most extreme positions on social issues every time, okay? And they kind of redefine progressive to make it seem more extreme. And the whole time I'm going, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So that doesn't represent everybody in the progressive ecosystem. In fact, it represents only a minority, a tiny minority of people in the progressive ecosystem. And then on top of that, it's terrible electoral strategy. And on top of that, it's bullying. It's all of these things.
Okay, couple things here. I'm going to extend an olive branch to Cenk. This is my last olive branch to Cenk. Cenk was absolutely fucked over by the Justice Democrats because some rad lib whiners found some old videos of Cenk where he had bad takes in like 2005 on various social issues, or they used language in a reporting fashion. They have a bunch of like these kind of scandals, like, you said this, is this you? And I don't know about you, chat, but politics is a lot different now, and people's views on issues have changed quite a bit since 2005. And people will be like, Justice Democrats, get rid of Cenk. So Cenk stepped down, and he was also unendorsed by Bernie Sanders for Congress because of these scandals. And I personally think that was a gigantic mistake. I think that was a bullshit move. And I think Justice Democrats should not have done that. Because something you said 10, 15, 20 years ago that you no longer believe and you repudiate, it shouldn't be held against you. Unless you were outright supporting some sort of fascist right-wing movement, which he was not doing. He was just a guy with some ill-considered takes that have now fallen out of favor. Who gives a shit? It happens. That happens to every single person as you start to get older. So if you're 20 and you've never had political opinions until last year, yeah, you're not going to have old political opinions you don't agree with because you're fucking 20. But when you're 40 or 45 or 50, yeah, you have some takes that you look back on and you disagree with, and you've moved and you've evolved beyond. That's called change. That's personal growth. So I think when Cenk was forced out of Justice Democrats over that rad lib bullshit, it was a mistake. I think Bernie Sanders caving to rad lib bullshit is actually what made his 2020 campaign weaker than his 2016 campaign. I think part of what made Bernie Sanders a worse candidate in 2020 than he was in 2016 is because he participated in this kind of like woke scold Brahmin left. I want to show you how woke I am by using social justice language and terminology, and getting you to do infinite, self-flagellation sessions. Aren't you a white man? Why don't you apologize for that? That kind of shit. And I think that was unfair to Cenk, and I think that broke his brain. I think that Reese Man is right. I think that broke Cenk's brain. I think getting pushed out of Justice Democrats, an organization that he and Kyle Kalinske helped found, probably one of the most successful organizations the online left has ever created, successfully electing or helping to elect multiple truly left-wing congressmen. Now, okay, olive branch done extending. Attacking AOC with Brianna Wu, you fucking loser. What position is AOC taking that it's max left? If anything, the criticism of AOC is that she hasn't drawn enough of a distinction between herself and the leadership of the Democrats. I think AOC has fallen into the same trap as Bernie Sanders by, trying to cater to the Brahmin left nonprofit industrial complex of DC. But that's not where my criticism comes from. My criticism comes from the fact that she hasn't drawn herself enough of a distinction between herself and Biden. What the fuck is he talking about? and to go on Brianna Wu's show, someone who has stalked her and insulted and disparaged and engaged in an attempt to get his nephew banned for anti-Semitism, who is a Zionist extremist, who the very same day he was on the stream, Brianna Wu was talking about how much she thinks it's good to kill Zionists killing Palestinians is good. What the fuck are you doing, man? You're coming after AOC to cozy up to Brianna Wu? And this is what's even wild. Pisco is one of Destiny's orbiters, isn't he? This is one of the most, even a Destiny orbiter is calling you a fucking loser. What the fuck are you doing, you goddamn loser? Embarrassing! Like, what the hell are you doing? And the thing is, and I got to admit, we've got to help them out. We have to help TYT. It's also disrespectful to cozy up to D when his community's been at Hassan's throat for years. Destiny's community just led a brigade to try to damage our entire platform to get me and Denims and Hassan and Vio and Frogan and Raf, who's a Jewish man, and Capri Sun Poppy and all these sort of leftist creators permanently banned on this platform. And then Cenk goes and cozies up to someone who's one of the most extreme Zionists and is a dumb person. Brianna Wu is a stupid piece of shit who holds no left-wing values whatsoever. So everybody help out, do Cenk a favor and go ahead and hit that unfollow button. Why the fuck can I not get on YouTube? Do they like rehost their shit? Oh my God. Why are they wasting money doing that? Does anyone even watch on that? 56 people watching now. I guess they're just restreaming Fox News. Do them a favor and hit unsubscribe. Do them a favor. Because they need to hear you. They need to see you unsubscribing so they get it through their fucking thick skull that they need to go a different direction. Because that's the only way to get a signal through at this point. So even Destiny orbiters understand that he's a fucking loser. Listen to the contempt and resentment that carries through when he mentions AOC, one of our best and most dynamic Democratic leaders. Save some for the anger for the dark MAGA oligarchs you are carrying water for. Isn't this guy a Destiny orbiter? I thought this guy was a Destiny orbiter. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh yeah, see, I'm not wrong. By the way, chat. Complete Mike from PA victory. Complete Mike from PA victory. They are now trying to cozy up to AOC. They're trying to kiss AOC's ass. Complete Mike from PA victory. One of my many debates I won against Destiny was about whether AOC was economically illiterate. We've all watched that clip many times where AOC didn't know that rich people borrowed against their assets for consumption. I had to teach him that rich people don't sell their stocks to buy a yacht. They borrow money against their stocks, so they don't have to pay any taxes, Destiny. Show the clip. It's kind of funny. Okay, why not? We've all seen it, but it does make me laugh. It does make me laugh.
It's such an unbelievably stupid. He just doesn't know anything.
You came in committed to a viewpoint that AOC was economically illiterate.
AOC is economically illiterate because she said that the money spent on stock buybacks should be spent on labor.
My dad ran a small business. And whenever we had a good year in the small business, we tried to pay our secretaries more, or we tried to invest more in things for the business.
Which is a dumb fucking statement to make that shows you have no idea how anything in economics works.
So what Destiny is trying to say here is that businesses cannot pay bonuses to their employees, or they ought not to pay bonuses to their employees because that's how economics works, which I don't know if you know is not an argument. He is a dummy. He's legitimately a dummy. I think he's trying to do an appeal to authority on the basis of what economics says. That's not even really an argument. Like, his argument would be something to like a good argument. I don't even want to give him this because he'll copy what I'm saying and use it from now on for the rest of time. So I'm not going to do it. I'm holding it back. I'm not going to give him the right-wing argument that he's too stupid to figure out on himself. You know what? I've decided not to give it to him. Fuck him. I'm not going to give him the right-wing argument that he'll then repeat from here to the end of time. Let's just say, if he was intelligent, he would have made an actual argument in favor of stock buybacks being economically optimal for the economy. And those arguments exist they're just theoretical and they're not based on empiricism, because guess what? Right-wing economics doesn't do well when you actually start measuring shit.
Why? What would drive you to make these statements?
First of all, it's not dumb as
It is dumb as to expect a company to return profits to its workers.
As a CEO of a major company, I can take that money and I don't have to do that at all, right? I can actually have the company buy its own stock on the market, right? That would effectively increase the stock price, right? And I've done nothing to make my product more valuable, my employees more happy. I haven't invested in the training or the workforce, but I've inflated the stock price, right? Absolutely. Right. So my question is, how is this different from a pyramid scheme? No, that's a very good question.
That's why I said AOC is a idiot.
Not to mention, wait, I don't even know what this has to do with stock buybacks at this point.
they are incentivized for short-term stock gains over long-term investment. It's better that dividends are paid because it's usually a taxable event. Not always, but usually. You could structure your sales during that spike in the price.
You could also get ultra by the SEC because this is called insider trading, Mike.
Now, if you go back, first of all, that's not true. And as the previous thing that he showed on screen, CEOs goose their pay with buybacks. Jackson had his staff study 385 recent buybacks. They found that shares rose by about 2.5% more than would otherwise have been expected in the days after a buyback announcement. They found that, compared with an ordinary day, twice as many companies see executive and directors sell shares in the 8 days after a buyback announcement. The value of sales goes up too. In the days before a buyback, selling by insiders averages less than 100,000 a day. In the weeks after a buyback, that average climbs to more than 500,000 a day. So in other words, what they're saying here is, in this study, executives structure their sales of their stocks and options to coincide with the company buying back the stock. And then when the company buys back the stock spikes. So the executives are incentivized to sell their own shares during the buyback, which means if they induce the company to do more buybacks, they'll get more of a personal profit. That's the entire argument for why buybacks are bad, because executives, there's an agency problem.
From a pyramid scheme. No, it's
stock buybacks at this point.
They are incentivized for short-term stock gains over long-term investment. It's better that dividends are paid because it's usually a taxable event. Not always, but usually. You could structure your sales during
Johnson won. They got him to change. Fuck. Oh, they all changed? Son of a bitch. They're going
Mr.
up
Norman, Johnson.
They did what I said they were going to do. They did what I said they were going to do. They just went up there and changed it.
Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds. Mr. Self, Johnson.
So in other words, he got the people to change their vote. He got these people to change their vote. So he could say he got it in the first vote. He didn't have to do another vote. It's over. Mike Johnson maintained Speaker of the House on the first vote, with only one Republican voting against him. He has now whipped more votes than Joe Biden has in the entire 4 years he was president. Joe Biden. Look at all these obsequious little fucking losers. Is this Nancy Mace? Who's hugging him?
I'll take those back again.
There you have it, chat. Mike Johnson wins. Mike Johnson has won the Speaker of the House for the next 2 years on the first vote.
Well, it looks like Mike Johnson has the votes to be Speaker, with Ralph Norman and Keith Self changing their votes from their first vote to Mike Johnson. The total is now 218 to 215. 218 was needed for a majority of 434 members present and voting. Representative Tim Burchett is joining us by phone. He is a Republican from Tennessee. Congressman Burchett, what just happened on the floor of the House of Representatives?
Well, you had two members. One had voted for Jim Jordan. I think the other one voted for Byron Donalds, and they just flipped their vote. There was a question of whether the vote had been called or not, and so I guess they decided. The parliamentarians had not called the votes, but now Speaker Johnson is Speaker Johnson. Once again.
On the first vote, we saw Mike Johnson, Keith Self, and Ralph Norman walk off the floor together in a trio. What was that conversation about? Do you know, Mr. Burchett?
I would say it was where they wanted to be philosophically and what they needed to get that vote.
Now, you were on the list of questionables for Mike Johnson. I hate to characterize you,
okay.
but
No.
is that a fair characterization?
That's a very fair characterization. I
And
prayed
you,
about it, and I figured out what I needed to do.
why did you support Mike Johnson on the first ballot?
Because he's never lied to me, and I know where he's at philosophically. We just need to support him more in the conservative causes. And I think he's going to be a great speaker.
Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, we appreciate you
He's
spending a
gonna
minute
be
with us. The House
he's gonna be
is
a
back
great
in
speaker,
session.
and there ain't gonna be no one who. There ain't gonna be none of these.
has received 218.
None of these people from the wrong skin tone. I mean, nation having power. Oh my God, that's insane. California is a shithole, dude.
The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 215. And the Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress.
Now, just remember, chat, that the only reason the Republicans have the House is because the Democrats cannot refuse to gerrymander states they have complete control over, like California and New York. The Democrats have fucked us once again, like handing the power of the Congress to the Republicans. Meanwhile, the Republicans gerrymander the fuck out of Florida, Ohio, Texas, any state they control, they gerrymander the fuck out of.
The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
Republicans should have. The Republicans should be within 20 seats of the majority if the Democrats did their jobs.
The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark.
Have I talked about this yet? Why is a Washington Post reporter being given access to a crime scene? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? She's a rabid pro-genocide person? Mike, maybe you're the only one who's economically literate. This is 100% rage bait.
It's dumb is because these companies holistically are just not very big companies, right? If you imagine a government that's evil enough to cause war just for some weapons manufacturers to make money, right? Like if you look at who are the three largest private military contractors USA: Lockheed, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman.
He's never heard of Northrop Grumman. He's Googling. He's Googling. He's Googling. He's making an argument. Does he actually think the leftist critique of American foreign policy is that we're doing it just for the profits of military industrial complex? Is that what he actually thinks? He's never read a book. He hasn't. I mean, did he complete high school history classes? Like, did he actually complete high school history classes? Because I know he didn't take any in college. So is he actually aware of what happened in America? I mean, I know he went to like a private school.
And Boeing does a lot of non-military stuff as well, right? These three companies combined, right, have a market cap, meaning the total value of all their outstanding stock, okay, or of all the stock, right? The total valuation, I guess, of the company, you'd say, is 200. So we got 125 billion here, 71 billion here. What is that, like 320 billion dollars between all of these companies. In what world is an evil dictator taking companies like this and engaging us in like world warfare when like Apple's stock alone is like 10 times? Just Apple alone is 3.6 trillion. When war will decrease the value of all of these other companies, right? Wars do not increase the stock market, broadly speaking. They don't increase the value in all your companies. Why would these
He's an absolute fucking moron. The point is not just that the military-industrial complex's stock prices are going to be higher than the biggest company in American history, who's seen a massive bubble in its valuation over the last 2 years, by the way. It's not just to demonstrate a direct financial benefit. It's that the military-industrial complex creates incentives to increase military spending by creating political incentives for politicians to redirect government resources away from domestic investment toward boondogglish spending. And as far as our foreign policy is premised on the United States practicing realpolitik to ensure its dominance and its willingness to violate international laws and norms in order to prop up its dictator allies. It will commit war crimes and invasions on countries around the world to ensure that the resources are available for American domestic capitalism. It isn't just the stock price of the companies that are big. It's a larger government and international milieu that rejects human rights, that rejects human universals, that rejects democracy for the interests of the elite status capitalist class in America, and to have American state be a global hegemon. He's actually a fucking moron. And here's the thing. This isn't my theory. This is an admitted argument. This is an admitted argument by the defense industry and the Defense Department. If you go and read their shit, they specifically talk about maintaining American global hegemony, maintaining American hyperpower status. And speaking of American hyperpower status, the single best way to defeat it is to give me more subs. We're 37 subs away. Also, market cap has no direct correlation with revenues and profits. Yes, don't even get into it. Don't even get into it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. How would Apple get their raw materials if the military-industrial complex didn't murder anyone touching their foreign interests? Well, I mean, it's all part of a American corporate milieu. I don't know why he brought up market cap. He was trying to say the military-industrial complex is too small of a percentage of the American stock market to actually have influence on American policy. He doesn't. Ham and Fist, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. Chat, we're just 18 away now. If you watch for one more minute, he goes to the standard. He's just like kind of stupid.
Relatively small companies in the grand scheme of things have so much sway over American politicians. It doesn't make any sense, right? What if it was the case that they were so evil that they're thinking about this, wouldn't it make more sense that like the CEO of like Apple and Facebook and Amazon, wouldn't these companies hire literal assassins to murder our military contractors and like, sorry.
Well, Bobby, thank you for the tier 3. Appreciate you.
You guys want to build the F-35? We're actually going to kill you because we don't want any weapons of war to be made, because we actually want
Mike Skeleton, thanks for the 5 tier 1s.
We just want to like have big economies that just grow and grow and grow, because war hurts our bottom line, right? Like a bad month for Apple would wipe out more market capitalization than like the top 5 military contractors combined in the United States. Just these companies are just not that large in the grand scheme of our economy, and the idea that they alone are dictating the direction. And this is even just looking at just like revenues and profits and percentage owned or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even make any sense that these are the companies that
I think one of the problems with Destiny is he's kind of a remedial person. He's not very intelligent, which is like he tries to take these arguments in isolation and he tries to simplify them down to like a Wikipedia level single sentence argument. He's a simpleton, really, is what it is. The argument is not the military-industrial complex dictates things. The argument is that the military-industrial complex interferes with American politics in favor of imperialist expansion. And they do so through a variety of means. For example, revolving door between senior levels of the military and State Department into private corporations. That, you know, and it happens at all levels. You know, colonels get a government contracting job with these companies. Generals get more senior positions in those companies. 4-star generals, joint chiefs of staff, they go on corporate boards. It's part of an American a revolving door of American hegemony. They buy off politicians through both direct pressure of giving them campaign contributions, but also indirect pressure by the creation of manufacturing for weapons within districts. These companies spread out the manufacturing of American military components all over the country so that Congress people have local nexuses of power and influence and interest in maintaining government spending. You have a panoply of influences, both in campaign finance, both in like material distribution of the proceeds of empire. I mean, for fuck's sake, Joe Biden just said we need to support Ukraine because we're spending billions of dollars in American factories building rockets and building shells. He literally just said it as an argument to do it. That is buying off politicians and communities by offering them unionized, well-paying jobs in the military-industrial complex. And again, it's not just that these companies are dictating. It's part of a milieu. And the military-industrial complex in America is dysfunctional, just so you know, Chad. We can't build shells. Russia could build a lot more shells than we can. Why is that? Because the military-industrial complex is about graft. And they figured out a bunch of ways of overcharging the American government. And that is like a well-established pattern in practice. Boeing was just fined for charging like $100,000 for soap dispensers in the bathrooms of certain cargo jets they make for the government. Like they had little like soap dispensers for washing your hands in the toilet, and they were charging $100,000 for like a small set of them. And you know who else is a military contractor? Oracle. What's their market cap? $465 billion. Who's another military contractor? Palantir. That's another $181 billion. So like, what are you talking? Like, he says like the guys that produce like rockets and shells and bullets, and that's the only thing that's the military-industrial complex. If you want to understand the military-industrial complex, Noam Chomsky could explain it because he was a professor at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and you'll understand what it actually is.
Well, the military is somewhat misunderstood, I think. Actually, I'm in a pretty good position to know it. I've been at MIT for, 60 years, I guess. And MIT is a good example of one crucial function of the military system. For many years, right into the 1970s, MIT was almost 100% funded by the Pentagon. It was also the main academic center of resistance against the Vietnam War. My lab, in fact, was one of the main academic centers. I was up for a long jail sentence. And the Pentagon didn't give a damn. If you want to overthrow the country, that's your business. They don't care, But what they did give a damn about is creating the next phase of the high-tech economy. The Pentagon was and remains, to a large extent, a kind of a funnel, but into which taxpayers pour funds, diluted into thinking, we're defending ourselves from whoever it may be, and the money goes into developing the next phase of the high-tech economy. So if you use a computer or you...
So Apple itself is the result of the military-industrial complex, you dumbass. LCD screens were developed for fighter jets. Where do you think the transistor chips were developed for? It was military research to make up for having big rooms of computers. What were these big rooms of computers used to calculate? Nuclear bomb detonations. Like, this is the type of shit that you don't know because you're a dumbass. The internet was to build a communication network to what? Resist the Soviets from a nuclear attack. DARPANet. That's the military-industrial complex. That's the industrial part of the military-industrial complex. It's not just industry of producing a shell, you dumb piece of shit. This is what I mean about Destiny. If you're a Destiny viewer, for the love of God, find some... your brain is being rotted by one of the dumbest pieces of shit on the internet. And not only is he stupid, which is a sin in and of itself, but he's also a malicious dumbass. He doesn't know anything. He read his first book like last year because he was on 8 different amphetamines. For the love of Christ, save yourself from this mediocre sex pest. For the love of Christ.
Use the internet. You fly an airplane, which is a modified bomber, and so on. You're taking advantage of the role of the dynamic state sector in the economy. I mean, a lot of what's called entrepreneurial initiative and so on is coming straight out of the state sector. Actually, I once wrote an article.
That's why I talked about Oracle, because Oracle was founded by somebody who was directly associated with the CIA for databases. Why do you think the CIA wants databases to be developed? Because if databases are developed, you can get more intelligence and you can figure out what you already know and make it searchable. A lot of you who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, you don't understand what it was like before computers had databases. I do. I'm old enough. When I was first going to the library, do you know how we looked up books in the library? Index cards. And we had the Dewey Decimal System. Maybe you learned that too. I don't know if you did. But we didn't know what books the library had until we were at the fucking library.
Years ago, after Alan Greenspan had given one of his orations about the marvels of the free economy, entrepreneurial initiative, consumer choice, he made the mistake of actually listing about a dozen examples. Every single one of them, with one exception, was a textbook case where the work was almost entirely done in the state sector. No consumer choice, no entrepreneurial initiative, just a lot of it paid for by the Pentagon. Actually, there was one exception, which was even more enlightening. It was transistors. He pointed out correctly that transistors were developed in the private sector, AT&T, but he didn't explain why. It was because AT&T had a government-guaranteed monopoly, so therefore they could charge monopoly prices, and they could use that benefit to establish a very good lab, Bell Labs. We used to go up and back there all the time in the 50s and 60s. So a great lab, did a lot of things, feeding at the public trough like everything else is. They were using wartime technology, which came out of the government, of course. They couldn't sell advanced computers because they were too expensive, so the government bought them. 100% of the advanced transistors put out by Western Electric around 1960 were picked up by the government. And in fact, if you look, procurement is one of the major means for subsidizing private industry. It was done with computers, it's done with all kinds of things. Until they can get to the point where they can sell things on the market, somebody's got to buy it.
So chat, this is the primary way to actually get rich. If you want real advice on how to get rich, start a business that has the government as a consumer. And that's why Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, because what was his businesses? Tesla, government trough for what? Carbon credits and EV subsidies. SpaceX replacing the state capacity to launch rockets at NASA with a privatized version. Who buys most of the launches from SpaceX? The fucking government and the military. And he basically created Starlink as a consumer for himself. He had this capacity and nobody was buying it, so he said, well, I guess I'll do a satellite internet company. He had to create his own demand for his own thing.
Okay, that's the government, usually the Pentagon. So that's one major aspect of the Pentagon, and it continues right to the present. In fact, it was kind of funny around 1970, if you were in this racket, under pressure from the popular anti-war movements, Congress passed legislation. It's called the Mansfield Amendment, which required that all Pentagon-funded work at universities has to be military-related. It's a good project for somebody, which I suggest if you want. Take a look at the DARPA, which is Advanced Research Project Agency, the one that does the fancy stuff. If you look at I've looked at a couple of them, but I suspect it's uniform. If you look at the DARPA reports, what people wrote about what they're doing, you got to put in description every year of what you've been doing. Before the Mansfield Amendment, people just said what they were doing. After the Mansfield Amendment, the reports have two parts. The first one is begins with some fakery about military applications which don't exist. And the second part, which they figure the generals will never get to, is about what they're actually doing. But that's one major component, one major function of the Pentagon. And you can do it because you can delude people. People think we got to defend ourselves, so we'll pour money into this. The other one is just beating people up. It's not a small thing.
Just 1 or 2 more minutes.
Yeah, okay. If you want to run the world, you got to have force. There's a reason why the United States is the only country in the world that has roughly 1,000 military bases around the world, has missile systems, nuclear systems aimed at anybody in sight who might someday be a problem, and so on. So that's important. There is what Dean Baker called a nanny state for the rich, and one large part of it is making sure that the rich are protected. Okay, so that's the other function of the military system.
I mean, it's like, how do you not know this shit? I guess it's because he didn't actually read a book. And what are we proposing it as an alternative? I think the state should invest in advanced research, except it should be separated from the military-industrial complex trough and spent on things like super high-speed rail, and advancing our transportation technology, advancing fusion energy and fourth generation nuclear energy, and battery technology, and renewable energy technology, and ecological management, and hardening ourselves from climate change, and providing infrastructure upgrades to our Florida coast. And Miami's gonna sink into the fucking ocean. How could anyone that listen to someone who sucked that bad at StarCraft is my question. I don't know.
Control everything. If you wanted to say something like, oh, I think that Amazon and Apple are secretly controlling the United States because of politician interest, I'm going to say we still need evidence, but at least that makes sense. Like, sure, there's so much money that goes through these entities.
He's legitimately a dumbass. He's legitimately a dumbass. That's a classic case if he got rewarded for not knowing anything by making a living off streaming, so that what incentive does he have to improve his knowledge? I mean, that's a great point. Like, his audience isn't bright enough to be like, wow, this guy's kind of a dummy, because they're not there to learn. Like, people are not there to learn things. They're there to have a social group. They're there to have the cult. They're there to, bully people or attack people. Well, they think they're bullying, but they're posting online. That's not bullying. They're posting online. They're cyberbullying. Cyberbullying ain't real. What a week, chat. Hope you've had a good new year. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. We covered a lot of really good stuff today. We didn't get to some of the other stuff I wanted to talk to, but whatever. It is what it is. My debate bro theory is that the worst of them were told they were underachievers when they were 10 to 15 years old and got lazy as fuck. And as adults, they're still lazy and scoff at reading books because they're still intuitive learners. And reading is a sign of weakness / ignorance. I think the worst thing that you can do to a young person is to tell them they're gifted and talented, or that they have potential. I think that's the absolute worst thing you can do, because you teach them the wrong lesson in life. The lesson in life is not the beginning of something. It's the end of something. It's not the idea, it's the product. So potentiality, I don't honestly give that much shit about it. What I care about is how you turn that potential into reality, into outcomes. And that is what we should be praising people for. Outcomes, not potentiality. Now, obviously, we should be supportive and help people grow, but we shouldn't teach them they're better than others because of potential. You're nothing. Potential is nothing but an idea of what could be that you haven't lived up to yet. All right, everybody, stay safe out there. Solidarity forever. Free Palestine. And, of course, DSA Dance, DSA Sniffa for the raid message. See you soon. Free Palestine.